I should have known something was off about the house the moment I stepped inside. The air was thick, stale, like a place that had been locked up too long, forgotten. A faint, musty odor clung to the walls, something like old wood and damp earth. But I told myself that was normal for a house this old. Nothing a little fresh air won't fix, I muttered, forcing a smile as I set my boxes down in the empty living room. The sound echoed strangely, as if the house were bigger on the inside than it looked from the outside. I had no reason to be uneasy. This was supposed to be my fresh start. After the divorce, I needed a place of my own. Somewhere far from memories, far from the whispers of well-meaning friends. A clean slate. When I saw the listing for this old Victorian on the edge of town, it felt like fate. A big place, cheap rent, quiet neighborhood. Too good to pass up. And sure, it needed work. The walls were faded, the floorboards groaned underfoot, and the pipes shuddered whenever the water ran. But it had charm, and that was enough for me. I spent the first few hours unpacking, settling in. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the house stretched and shifted, the wooden beams creaking like an old ship settling into the sea. I told myself it was nothing. Just an old house adjusting to a new tenant. But later that night, as I lay in bed, I heard it. A slow, deliberate creaking. Like footsteps on the floorboards just outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, listening. Silence. Then a faint sound, like a whisper just beneath the edge of hearing. I sat up, my heart thudding. It was probably nothing. Just the wind. Or the house settling. I forced myself to lie back down, pulling the covers up to my chin. It was just an old house. Just me and my imagination. And yet, as I drifted into uneasy sleep, I could have sworn I heard something moving in the walls. Something breathing. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained, like I hadn't really slept at all. The house was silent now, but the uneasy feeling from the night before still clung to me. I told myself it was just nerves. A new house, unfamiliar sounds. It was normal to feel unsettled. After a quick shower, ignoring how the water took too long to heat and had a faint metallic taste, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. It was quiet, almost too quiet, with houses spaced far apart, their windows staring blankly like dead eyes. I was halfway down the street when I saw her. An older woman, maybe in her 60s, sitting on a porch across the street. Her silver hair was pulled back into a loose bun, and she was sipping from a chipped coffee mug, watching me with a look I couldn't quite place. I gave a small wave. Morning? She didn't smile, just tilted her head. You're the one who moved into that house? Her tone made me pause. Yeah, I said slowly. Just moved in yesterday. She took another sip of her coffee, eyes still fixed on me. You sleep okay? The question caught me off guard. I forced a chuckle. Yeah, I guess. Why? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked past me toward the house, her expression unreadable. Then she said, almost absently, people don't stay long in that house. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? She shrugged, setting her mug down on the porch railing. Last guy left in the middle of the night. Didn't even take his things. Before that, a woman, she ran out screaming. Never came back. I felt a prickle of unease. Why? I asked. The old woman met my gaze, her face lined with something like pity. They said they heard things. In the walls. In the floors. Whispers. Footsteps. The hairs on my arms stood up. I forced a laugh, trying to shake the tension creeping into my chest. It's an old house. Creaks and groans are normal. She nodded, but there was something knowing in her eyes. Sure, she said. Just be careful. I hesitated, then asked, do you know anything about the previous owners? Her expression darkened. The house belonged to a man named Edwin Larkin. Lived there for years. Kept to himself mostly. People say he was into strange things. Occult books, rituals. He was convinced he could open something. Open what? She shook her head. No one really knows. He disappeared one night. Some say he went mad. Others say he finally opened whatever he was trying to and something took him. A cold weight settled in my gut. I forced a smile. Well, that's a hell of a story. She just watched me, her expression unreadable. Just be careful, she repeated. Then she stood and went inside, shutting the door behind her. I exhaled, shaking my head. Small towns. Always full of weird stories. Still, as I walked back to the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls were waiting for me, listening. And that night, as I lay in bed, the whispers started again. I left the light on that night. I wasn't afraid, at least that's what I told myself. It was just the old woman's stories getting to me. Just my mind playing tricks. But as the hours dragged on, I started to hear them again. It was soft at first, just a faint rustling like mice skittering behind the walls. That was normal, right? Old houses had pests. Then came the whispers. Low, urgent. Too faint to make out the words, but I could hear the cadence, the way they rose and fell like a conversation just out of reach. I turned onto my side, squeezing my eyes shut. Asterisk, just the wind. Just the house settling, asterisk. But I wasn't dreaming. A slow, deliberate creak echoed from the hallway. A footstep. My stomach twisted into knots. Another step. Closer. I held my breath, listening, my pulse hammering in my ears. The floorboard outside my door groaned. I shot up in bed, my breath coming in sharp gasps. Hello? Silence. I stared at the door, half expecting the knob to turn, the wood to shudder as something forced its way in. Nothing. After what felt like an eternity, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood, heart pounding. The floor was ice cold beneath my feet as I crept toward the door. I pressed my ear against it, listening. Nothing. Swallowing hard, I steeled myself and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. The air felt heavier somehow, thick with something I couldn't name. I checked every room, flicking on lights as I went. Living room, empty. Kitchen, silent. Bathroom, normal. I was being ridiculous. As I turned to head back to my room, a gust of cold air brushed past me, raising goosebumps along my arms. Then, a whisper, right at my ear. Not from the walls this time. Right. Next. Me. I spun around, my breath hitching in my throat. There was no one there. But the whispering hadn't stopped. It was coming from inside the walls again. More urgent this time, like something was trying to get out. I backed away, my pulse slamming against my ribs. My first instinct was to leave, just grab my keys and go. But that was ridiculous. This was my house now. And I wasn't about to run because of some stupid noises. I forced myself to take a deep breath. You're just tired, I muttered to myself. That's all. I climbed back into bed, pulling the covers over me like a child hiding from the monsters in the dark. But even as exhaustion pulled me under, I swore I could still hear them. Whispering. Waiting. The next morning, I woke up feeling worse than before, like I hadn't slept at all. My head ached, my limbs felt heavy, and my skin was clammy with sweat. The whispers. The footsteps. They had to be a dream. Didn't they? I stumbled into the kitchen, desperate for coffee. As I reached for the cabinet, I stopped. The basement door was open. I was sure it had been closed the night before. I stared at it, a deep unease curling in my stomach. The door led to a place I hadn't explored yet. The real estate agent had warned me that the basement was unfinished, full of dust and old junk from the previous owners. I had planned to check it out eventually, but now, with the door yawning open like a mouth in the dim morning light, I wasn't so sure. I didn't want to go down there. But I had to. Grabbing my phone for light, I descended the stairs. The air grew colder with every step, thick with the scent of mildew and something else. Something rotten. The floor groaned beneath my feet as I reached the bottom. Dust coated everything. Old furniture, broken picture frames, stacks of yellowed newspapers. And then I saw it. A door. Not the rickety wooden kind you'd expect in a basement. This was different. Smooth, black, and featureless. It didn't match the rest of the house at all. A chill crawled down my spine. I stepped closer, reaching out to touch it. A whisper. Right behind me. I spun around, my phone's light shaking. The basement was empty. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it. A slow, rhythmic creaking came from the walls. Like someone shifting just out of sight. I turned back to the door, every instinct screaming at me to leave it alone. But I couldn't. Swallowing hard, I reached for the handle. It didn't budge. What? A wave of relief and disappointment washed over me at the same time. Then, as I turned to leave, something scratched from the other side of the door. A long, deliberate drag of nails against wood. I bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind me. My hands were shaking as I locked it. And as I stood there, breathless and sweating, I realized something that made my stomach drop. That door in the basement. It hadn't been there before. I spent the rest of the day trying to convince myself I hadn't really seen what I saw. That door, it had to be part of the house, right? Maybe I had just overlooked it before. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. I was tired, stressed. The move, the isolation, the weird stories from the old woman across the street, it was all getting to me. But deep down, I knew better. Something was wrong with this house, and I needed to know what. I decided to do some digging. If there was any truth to what the old woman had said about Edwin Larkin, I needed proof. I started with the attic. The real estate agent had told me it was just storage, boxes of old junk, furniture too battered to be worth selling. But if Larkin really had lived here, maybe he had left something behind. The attic door groaned as I pushed it open. A musty, stale air hit me, thick with the scent of dust and something else. Something metallic. Like rust. I climbed the narrow steps, my flashlight casting long shadows over the forgotten relics of past owners. Broken chairs, moth-eaten clothes, stacks of newspapers dating back decades. And then, in the far corner, I saw it. A trunk. It was massive, its once polished wood now warped and peeling with age. Heavy iron clasps held it shut, but one had already snapped, leaving it slightly open. I hesitated, my pulse quickening. Then I knelt down and lifted the lid. Inside were old books, stacks of yellowed papers, and, at the very bottom, a leather-bound journal. I picked it up, the cover dry and cracked beneath my fingertips. The name scrawled on the front in faded ink made my breath hitch. Edwin Larkin. I swallowed hard and opened the journal. The first few pages were filled with neat, precise handwriting. Notes about repairs to the house, weather patterns, mundane day-to-day observations. But then the entries changed. Asterisk, the noises started again last night. The whispers in the walls, asterisk. Asterisk, it is watching me. I can feel it, asterisk. Asterisk, the door appeared 2 nights ago. I did not build it. I do not know how it came to be, asterisk. My stomach twisted. I flipped forward, the handwriting growing more erratic, the words smudged as if written in haste or fear. Asterisk, I made a mistake. I thought I could control it. I was wrong, asterisk. Asterisk, it whispers to me now. It knows my name, asterisk. Asterisk, I tried to leave. It will not let me, an asterisk. My hands trembled as I turned to the last entry. The ink was smeared, the words jagged and frantic. Asterisk, it is coming. God help me, it is coming, asterisk. A sudden sharp thud echoed from downstairs. I nearly dropped the journal. The sound came again. Something was moving in the house. I wasn't alone. I froze. The sound hadn't come from outside. It was inside the house. A slow, deliberate thud. Then another. Footsteps. I clutched the journal to my chest, my heartbeat slamming against my ribs. The attic was silent except for the faint rustling of dust settling. Then, asterisk, thud. Thud. Thud, asterisk. Closer now. I swallowed hard, straining to listen. The footsteps weren't coming from the hallway or the stairs. They were coming from below me, from inside the walls. A sharp chill spread through my body as I backed toward the attic door. I needed to get out of here. Slowly, carefully, I descended the attic steps, wincing as the old wood creaked beneath my weight. I kept my breath shallow, listening for any shift in the air, any sign that I wasn't alone. As I reached the second-floor landing, the house fell eerily silent again. No more footsteps. No more thuds. Just stillness. I let out a shaky breath, gripping the journal tighter. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the old wood had just shifted, settling. A knock. My entire body locked up. Someone was at the front door. I turned slowly, my breath catching in my throat. The knock came again, 3 slow, heavy taps against the wood. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed at me not to open it, but something else whispered that I had to, that I didn't have a choice. Moving like I was in a dream, I stepped forward, my fingers trembling as I reached for the knob. I hesitated for a moment longer. Then, swallowing hard, I pulled the door open. A man stood on my porch. Tall, gaunt. His skin was sickly pale, almost waxen in the dim porch light. His suit was old-fashioned, black and slightly tattered, like something from another time. He had no luggage, no umbrella, nothing to suggest why he was here in the middle of the night. His eyes, God, his eyes. They were wrong. Too dark. Too deep. Like twin voids that swallowed everything in their gaze. He smiled. May I come in? Every muscle in my body screamed no. But my mouth had gone dry, my voice trapped somewhere deep in my throat. He tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something I couldn't hear. His smile widened. You've already opened the door, he murmured. That's enough. And then, he stepped forward. I stumbled back as the man crossed the threshold, his polished shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. I didn't, my voice cracked. I didn't say you could come in. His smile didn't falter. If anything, it grew wider. But you did, he said softly. You opened the door. The air inside the house felt thicker now, heavy like the pressure before a thunderstorm. My skin prickled, my instincts screaming at me to run, but I was frozen. The man in black stepped further inside, his movements slow and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. His head turned slightly as he surveyed the room, taking in the old wooden beams, the peeling wallpaper. This house has been waiting, he mused, for someone like you. I took another step back, my fingers tightening around the journal still clutched to my chest. Who are you? He looked at me then. Really looked. Something about his gaze made my stomach drop. His eyes weren't just dark, they were empty. A perfect, bottomless black. You already know, he said. A wave of nausea rolled over me. No, I didn't know asterisk. Except, a part of me did. A whispering, a feeling, a sickening familiarity I couldn't place. The man took another step closer. You found it, didn't you? He murmured. The door? I didn't answer. Couldn't. His smile never wavered. And you heard them? A cold sweat broke out along my spine. I don't know what you're talking about, I managed. He chuckled low and knowing. Lying doesn't suit you. I wanted to bolt, to grab my keys and run, but my feet refused to move. My body felt heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on me. The whispers started again. Soft at first, curling around the edges of my consciousness like mist. Then louder, urgent, behind the walls, beneath the floorboards, inside my head. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing them away. This isn't real. This isn't happening, asterisk. The man in black exhaled, a slow, almost satisfied sound. Would you like to see? I forced my eyes open. See what? He gestured toward the basement door. The same basement I had locked. The same basement where the door had appeared. Except now it was open. The black door at the bottom of the stairs stood ajar, revealing nothing but an endless, yawning darkness beyond. A darkness that breathed. The whispers swelled, overlapping voices hissing my name. The man turned toward me, tilting his head like an amused parent indulging a frightened child. This house, he said, does not belong to you. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then he smiled wider, asterisk, too wide, asterisk, and whispered, it never did, and the lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment there was nothing, no sound, no movement, no sense of direction. Just an abyss stretching in every direction. Then the whispering returned. Soft at first, slithering through the air like a cold breath against the back of my neck. Then louder, urgent, desperate. I fumbled in the pitch black, my pulse hammering in my throat. Hello? My voice came out hoarse, swallowed by the thick air pressing in around me. A sound, a soft shuffle like bare feet sliding across wooden floors. Not mine. The lights flickered back to life. I was alone. The man in black was gone. But the basement door, the one I had locked, the one I had just seen standing open, was shut again. My breath came in short, shallow gasps. No, I had seen it. I swallowed hard, backing away. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to pack my things and never come back. But then I saw something that made my stomach drop. The journal. It was lying on the floor where I had dropped it. But something had changed. The last page, the frantic, smeared handwriting that had ended with "it is coming," was gone. In its place was something new. A single sentence. You let him in. A cold wave of terror crashed over me. My vision blurred. My breath hitched. I grabbed the journal and ran. Upstairs, I slammed my bedroom door shut, locking it behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone as I fumbled to turn on the flashlight. I needed to leave. No, but I couldn't just run. I needed answers. I flipped through the journal again, scanning the pages for something, anything that would tell me what was happening. And then I found it. An entry written in a tight, hurried script. I was wrong. It was never the house. It was the door. The door is older than this place. Older than all of us, I tried to seal it, to keep it hidden. But it waits. It watches. And once it chooses you, The next few lines were scratched out so violently the paper had torn. Then, beneath the ruined ink, one final sentence remained. If you see him, it's already too late. A sharp knock rang out from the other side of my bedroom door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. I stopped breathing. Another knock. Then, the doorknob twisted. I stumbled back, my body cold with fear. Silence. Then, from the other side of the door, the man's voice. Come. Amused. You can't ignore me forever. The whispering swelled, pressing against my skull like static. The lights flickered again. And the lock on my door, clicked open, The lock clicked open. I didn't move. I couldn't. My entire body felt paralyzed, my breath caught in my throat. The doorknob turned slowly, deliberately, and I could hear the faintest creak of the wood as the door began to inch open. No, 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 no. I stumbled backward, gripping the journal so tightly my knuckles ached. My eyes darted around the room, asterisk, asterisk, a weapon, an escape, something, anything, asterisk, asterisk. The window. I didn't think, I just moved. I lunged toward it, yanking at the latch with frantic fingers. It was old, rusted, barely budging, asterisk, asterisk, come on, asterisk, asterisk. Behind me, the door groaned open. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I could feel him there. The air in the room had changed, thick and heavy, like the atmosphere before a thunderstorm. The whispering had stopped, but the silence was worse. It was waiting. Watching. He was watching. I sucked in a sharp breath, gave the window one final desperate pull, asterisk, asterisk, and it slid open, asterisk, asterisk. Cold night air hit my face as I shoved myself forward. I didn't care about the drop, I just needed to get out. Then, fingers closed around my wrist. I choked on a scream. The grip was impossibly cold, seeping into my bones like frostbite. Not just cold, asterisk, asterisk, wrong, asterisk, asterisk, like something that had never been alive. Slowly, against every survival instinct I had left, I turned my head, and I saw him. The man in black, standing in the doorway. But his fingers were still around my wrist. I looked down. There was nothing there. Nothing. Just the sensation of fingers digging into my skin, holding me in place. His smile widened. "You can't run," he said. The whispering returned, a low, insidious murmur just beneath my skin. The light overhead flickered violently, and in the reflection of the window, I saw them. Shadows. Tall, thin, stretching unnaturally from the walls, the ceiling, the corners of the room. Dozens of them. Not quite human. Not quite anything. Reaching for me. I did the only thing I could. I jumped. I hit the ground hard. Pain exploded up my legs, knocking the breath from my lungs. But I was alive. I scrambled to my feet, heart pounding, vision swimming. The house loomed above me, its dark windows like empty eye sockets. The bedroom light flickered once, then went out. The whispering didn't stop. It was louder now, rising in intensity, coming from everywhere. I ran. I didn't stop to look back. Didn't stop to breathe. I just ran. Through the yard, down the street, past the empty houses and darkened windows. The town was silent, dead, like it had never been alive to begin with. I reached my car, fumbled with the keys, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped them. The whispers were in my ears now, in my head. I could still feel him, still feel them. I threw myself into the driver's seat, turned the key, asterisk, asterisk, the engine roared to life, asterisk, asterisk. Then I saw it, in the rearview mirror, a figure, standing in the middle of the street, watching me. The man in black, smiling. And behind him, in the windows of my house, the shadows moved. I slammed my foot on the gas. I didn't stop driving. Not until the house was miles behind me. Not until the town disappeared into the night. Not until the whispering finally, asterisk, asterisk, finally, asterisk, asterisk, faded. And even then, I knew it wasn't over. Because as I reached the highway, gripping the wheel so hard my fingers ached, the radio crackled to life. And a voice whispered through the static. "You let him in." The radio hissed with static. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles burned. The road stretched before me in an endless black ribbon, illuminated only by the weak glow of my headlights. And the voice whispered again. Asterisk, "You let him in." Asterisk. I slammed my fist against the radio dial, twisting the knob to turn it off. The static sputtered, faded, then returned. Louder. Asterisk, "There is no leaving." Asterisk. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to keep driving. My breath came in shallow gasps, my mind racing. I had done it. I had escaped. I had left that cursed house behind. Hadn't I? My eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. The highway behind me was empty. But the longer I stared, the more something felt wrong. The road stretched out in an unnatural way, warping, twisting, not like something real, but like a reflection in warped glass. I looked back to the road ahead, and my stomach dropped. The house was in front of me. The same house. The same looming shape against the night sky. I slammed on the brakes, my tires screeching against the pavement. My heart pounded so hard it drowned out everything else. This wasn't possible. I had been driving for miles. And yet, I was back. The whispering returned, curling around my ears like smoke. Asterisk, "You never left." Asterisk. I shook my head violently. Asterisk, no. No, this is a trick. A hallucination. I hit my head, asterisk. A sharp knock on my window. I screamed. A face loomed just outside the glass, too close, too still. The man in black, smiling. His lips didn't move, but his voice echoed inside my skull. Asterisk, let's go home. Asterisk. The whispering surged, rising to a deafening chorus, voices overlapping, clawing at my mind. The air turned frigid. My breath came out in white puffs. And then, the passenger door unlocked. Slowly, deliberately. Click. The handle turned. No. I shoved the car into reverse, slamming my foot on the gas. The tires screeched, the car lurched backward. But the house never got any farther away. No matter how much I drove, how much I fought, I wasn't moving. I was trapped. The passenger door creaked open. Cold air rushed inside. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw him, sitting in the seat beside me. The man in black, smiling. His voice was gentle, almost comforting. Asterisk, there's nowhere left to run. Asterisk. And then, the lights went out. The lights went out. Darkness swallowed everything. For a moment, I wasn't in my car anymore. I wasn't anywhere. I was weightless, drifting in a void, unable to move, unable to scream. Then, a single light flickered on. Not my headlights, not my dashboard. A lamp. A small, flickering lamp on a wooden nightstand. I blinked. I was inside the house. My house. No. I shot up from where I was sitting, asterisk sitting, not driving asterisk, and stumbled backward. My breathing was ragged, heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped animal. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. I had been driving. I had left. The whispering started again. But this time it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from behind me. I turned. The basement door stood open. That same impossible, endless blackness stretched beyond it. A blackness that pulsed like something alive, breathing. And at the top of the basement stairs, waiting, watching, the man in black. You fought well, he murmured, tilting his head slightly. Most don't last this long. I took a shaky step backward. This isn't happening. I left. I drove away. His smile didn't waver. Did you? My blood turned to ice. The whispering grew louder, curling around my thoughts, filling the room with its hungry, insidious murmur. You never left. I looked down at my hands. They were clean, but I remembered them being dirty. Scraped. From the fall. From the window. From the road. I reached into my pocket, heart hammering, fingers fumbling for my car keys. They weren't there. A sick, twisting feeling coiled in my gut. Had I ever left at all? Come now, the man in black said gently. It's time. The whispering surged, pressing against my skull. The air crackled, electric, charged with something I couldn't name. And then, the door upstairs opened. For the first time since moving in, I saw it. The attic. The whispering stopped. The house held its breath. And the man in black. For the first time, his smile faltered. A flicker. A small, almost imperceptible shift. Like he hadn't expected that door to open. The air changed. The pressure lifted. I didn't hesitate. I ran. Straight past him. Straight up the stairs. The whispering screamed, but I ignored it. I ignored the hands I felt grabbing at me from the walls. I threw myself into the attic. And slammed the door shut. Darkness. Silence. Then, a single candle flickered to life. And I wasn't alone. Someone sat in the far corner of the attic, huddled in the dim glow of the candlelight. A woman, hair tangled, skin pale, eyes wide, haunted. She lifted her head, and in a voice rough from disuse, she whispered, "You let him in too." The woman's voice barely registered over the sound of my own pounding heart. Asterisk, you let him in too. Asterisk. I pressed my back against the attic door, breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispering below had turned into something worse, a throbbing, seething roar that pounded against the walls, rattling the floor beneath me. They were trying to get in. He was trying to get in. But something about this room, something was stopping him. I turned my attention back to the woman. She looked like she had been here for years. Her clothes were worn, her skin pale as parchment, her lips cracked and dry. Her eyes flicked toward the door and she shuddered. "He doesn't like this room," she whispered. "It's the only place he can't follow." My mouth was dry. "Who are you?" The candle between us flickered wildly. Shadows stretched across the attic's slanted ceiling, shifting, watching. The woman swallowed hard. "I used to live here," she said, voice raw. "A long time ago. Before," her breath hitched. "Before the door. The basement. The impossible darkness. The thing that had reached for me in my room, that had whispered in my head, that had pulled me back when I tried to escape." My stomach twisted. "The door is a way in?" She nodded slowly. For him? A cold realization settled over me. He's not the only one, is he? The woman's gaze darkened. I didn't need her to answer. I already knew. I had seen them. The shadows, the things stretching from the corners of the house. The things watching from the windows. A sharp, splintering crack shattered the silence. The attic door shuddered violently. I spun around just in time to see the wood splintering outward, like something was pushing from the other side. The whispering surged back, filling the attic, curling around my brain like rotting fingers. The woman lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. Asterisk, asterisk, listen to me. Asterisk, asterisk, she rasped. He's almost through. You have one chance. One way to stop this. The wood splintered again. Something black seeped through the cracks. My pulse hammered. How? Tell me. Her grip tightened. The door is open because of you. Only you can close it? I shook my head wildly. I don't know how. Another splintering crack. Then, a low, familiar voice. Asterisk, come now. It's time to go. Asterisk. The door exploded inward. Darkness flooded the attic. I stumbled back, choking on the cold, oily void that seeped into the room, curling around my ankles, my arms, my throat. The man in black stepped through. His smile was wider now, too wide. You belong to me, he murmured. Something cold wrapped around my wrist. I screamed. The woman lunged. She shoved me backward, and suddenly I was falling. Not through the attic, not through the house, through something else. Through the dark, through the whispering, through the endless, impossible blackness that had been waiting all along. And as I fell, I heard his voice laughing. I woke up in my car. The engine was still running. The road stretched before me, an empty, endless ribbon of asphalt beneath the cold glow of the streetlights. I gripped the steering wheel with trembling fingers, my breath coming in sharp gasps. Had it been a dream? A hallucination? I turned. The house was gone. Not just behind me. Gone. Like it had never been there at all. I exhaled shakily, my entire body trembling as I reached into my pocket for my keys. And froze. Because clutched in my shaking hand was the journal. The same one. The same worn leather cover, the same shaking, desperate handwriting. A single sentence stared up at me from the final page. You let him in. A slow, creeping chill curled up my spine. I turned to the rearview mirror and froze. In the back seat, just barely visible in the dim reflection. A figure, smiling. And then, the whispering began again. Story 2. I should have known better than to move into a house like this. The rent was suspiciously cheap, even for a place as old as this one. A 2-story Victorian on the edge of town, nestled between 2 empty lots overgrown with weeds. The paint was peeling, the front steps sagged, and the windows stared out like dead eyes. But I was desperate for a fresh start. After the divorce, I couldn't stand the silence of my old apartment, the way every corner reminded me of my failed marriage. I needed space, I needed change. And more than anything, I needed to believe that things were going to get better. The landlord, a wiry man named Mr. Cartwright, barely made eye contact when he handed me the keys. She's an old house, he said, jingling the keyring absently. Creaks a bit, pipes knock sometimes. Nothing unusual. Just give her some time to warm up to you. I laughed, thinking it was just his way of saying the house needed patience. Looking back, I realized now that he wasn't joking. I spent the first day settling in, unpacking boxes and trying to make the place feel like home. The house was full of little quirks. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt wood, though I never found any scorch marks. The living room had a grandfather clock that didn't work, yet sometimes when I passed by, I swore I could hear a soft ticking. And the stairs, Jesus, the stairs. They groaned under my weight, each step letting out a slow, agonized creak. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, I was exhausted. I heated up some leftovers, poured a glass of wine, and sank onto the couch. It was quiet, eerily so. No sounds from the street, no hum of distant traffic. Just the house settling in around me. And then I heard it, a sound from upstairs. A slow, deliberate footstep. I froze, breath catching in my throat. The sound came again, heavier this time, like someone shifting their weight just above me. My mind raced. A burglar? A squatter? I grabbed a kitchen knife and crept up the stairs, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The hallway was empty, doors slightly ajar just as I had left them. My bedroom, the spare room, the bathroom, nothing. I let out a shaky breath, laughing at myself. Old houses make noise. That's all it is, asterisk, asterisk. That's what I told myself anyway. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. The house was quiet again, as if waiting for me to close my eyes. Eventually, exhaustion won and I drifted into a restless sleep. But I swear, just before I slipped under, I felt something. A shift in the air. A weight at the foot of my bed. And then, ever so softly, I heard a whisper. "Welcome home." The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream. A mix of exhaustion, stress, and my overactive imagination. I told myself that the house was just old, that I wasn't used to its sounds yet. But something about that whisper, it lingered in my mind like a bad aftertaste. I spent the day unpacking, trying to distract myself. The house felt different in the daylight, less eerie. Sunlight streamed through the high windows, warming the wooden floors. The kitchen, with its outdated appliances and floral wallpaper, seemed almost charming. Almost. I made coffee and stepped onto the front porch. That's when I met her. Mrs. Callahan. She lived across the street in a little white bungalow with a picket fence and a garden full of wilting roses. She was already watching me when I stepped outside, a steaming mug in her hand, her pale blue eyes sharp beneath wisps of silver hair. "You moved in fast," she said, not unkindly. I forced a smile. "Yeah. Needed a new place." She didn't smile back. Instead, she sipped her coffee, eyes drifting toward my house. Not many folks stay long in that one. I felt a prickle of unease. "Why's that?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Old houses have history, that's all. You hear things, see things that ain't there. Tricks of the mind." She sighed as if weighing whether to say more. "Last folks who lived there, young couple, left in the middle of the night. Woman came running out barefoot, screaming. Said something about shadows in the walls." My stomach tightened. "Shadows?" Mrs. Callahan shrugged. "Who knows? Maybe she was sick in the head. Just keep your wits about you." With that, she turned and went inside, leaving me alone on the porch with my cooling coffee and a deep, gnawing sense of unease. Shadows in the walls. That night the house felt different. The warmth from the sun had faded, leaving only the creaking bones of the place. I ordered takeout, left the TV on for background noise, and tried not to think about what Mrs. Callahan had said. But the house wouldn't let me forget. It started with the scratching. Soft at first, a faint skittering behind the walls like mice. I tried to ignore it, telling myself that old houses had pests. But as the night went on, the sound grew louder, more frantic, like something trying to claw its way out. I put my ear to the wall. Scrape, scratch, tap asterisk asterisk. I jerked back. Tap? That wasn't an animal. It was rhythmic, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap asterisk asterisk. Goosebumps prickled my skin. It almost sounded like knocking. I swallowed hard, stepping away. Old house, I muttered to myself. Just an old house. But as I climbed into bed, the scratching started again. And just before I drifted off, I swore I heard a whisper. A dry, rasping voice from somewhere inside the walls. "Let me out." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. The scratching. The whisper. That awful, deliberate tapping. It would start soft, almost like it wanted to lull me into thinking it was just the house settling. But then, just as I would begin to drift off, tap, tap, tap asterisk asterisk, like knuckles against wood. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, willing my brain to rationalize it. Pipes, mice, something explainable. But deep down, a cold certainty settled into my bones. Something was inside these walls, and it wanted out asterisk asterisk. By morning I was exhausted. My coffee barely cut through the fog in my head, and I found myself jumping at every small sound. I was officially spooked, and I hated it. I wasn't some wide-eyed kid scared of ghost stories. I was an adult, a rational, grown-ass man. So I decided to do something about it. I grabbed a flashlight and went searching. The house had an attic, but the entrance was nailed shut. The basement was unfinished, full of cobwebs and rusted pipes, but empty. Then there was the door at the end of the upstairs hallway. The one I hadn't opened yet. I'd assumed it was just a closet. But when I turned the handle, it didn't budge. What? A cold prickle ran down my spine. I checked my key ring, but none of them fit. The landlord hadn't mentioned a locked room, and I hadn't thought to ask. But now that I was standing in front of it, a gnawing feeling settled in my gut. Something was behind that door, and it didn't want me to open it. I pressed my ear to the wood, held my breath. Silence. Then, scratch. I stumbled back, heart hammering. No, I had imagined it. Lack of sleep was getting to me. That's all. I backed away, forcing myself to turn and leave it alone. I'd call the landlord later, ask about the door. Maybe it was just a storage space. But as I walked away, I heard something that made my skin crawl. A soft, slow ticking sound, like a clock, coming from inside the locked room. I didn't go near the locked door for the rest of the day. Every time I walked past it, I swore I could hear that faint ticking sound, steady and deliberate, like the heartbeat of something waiting, watching. I busied myself with unpacking, trying to pretend I hadn't heard the scratching, the whispers, the tapping. But the more I ignored it, the more the house seemed to push back. The pipes groaned louder, the floorboards creaked as if something was shifting its weight when I wasn't looking, and the smell of burnt wood in the kitchen was getting stronger. By evening, I was done pretending everything was fine. I called my landlord. The phone rang for a long time before Mr. Cartwright finally picked up, his voice groggy like I'd woken him. "Yeah? Hey, it's me, the guy renting the house on Wren Street," I said, pacing the living room. "I just had a question about the upstairs. There's a locked door at the end of the hall. You leave that alone." His voice was sharp, cutting through the static. I stopped pacing. "What?" "It stays locked. That was the agreement." "Agreement?" No, there hadn't been any agreement. I would have remembered if I'd been told I was renting a house with a sealed room. "What's in there?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. Pause. Then, quietly, "Nothing you need to be messing with." The line clicked. He hung up. I stood there, my pulse thrumming in my ears. That was it. No explanation, no warning, just don't mess with it. Which, of course, meant I had to mess with it. That night, after a couple of stiff drinks, I decided to do some digging. If Cartwright wouldn't tell me, maybe I could find something in the house itself. The attic was still nailed shut. The basement had nothing but dust and rust. That left one place to check, the cabinets in the study. The previous owners had left a few things behind. Old books, papers, a broken lamp. Most of it was useless, but in the bottom drawer, shoved behind a stack of yellowed newspapers, I found it. A journal. The leather cover was cracked with age, the pages stiff and stained. I flipped to the first entry, my breath catching as I read the words scrawled in thick, hurried ink. June 3rd, 1957. I should have never bought this house underscore something lives here. Something in the walls underscore. I stared at the words, my mouth dry. Flipping through the pages, I found more. July 12th, 1957. Underscore it scratches at night. It knocks. It waits underscore. Underscore I hear it whisper when I sleep underscore. August 21st, 1957. Underscore the door won't stay locked. I nailed it shut, but in the morning the nails are gone underscore. Underscore soon I will be gone too underscore. My fingers trembled as I turned to the last page, the ink darker, deeper, the words carved into the paper like the writer had been shaking. September 4th, 1957. Underscore I made a mistake underscore. Underscore I let it out underscore. The rest of the page was smeared, the ink bled together like something had soaked through the paper. But at the very bottom, in jagged, desperate script, was one final warning. Don't open the door. A floorboard creaked above me. I snapped the journal shut, my breath catching in my throat. Another creak. Slow, deliberate. Footsteps. Coming from the hallway. Coming from right outside the locked door. I sat frozen, clutching the journal in my hands, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The footsteps were slow. Heavy. Right outside the locked door. I tried to convince myself it was just the house settling. Old with shifts, things creak. It's normal. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't alone. For what felt like an eternity, I sat there, listening, barely breathing. Then silence. I swallowed hard. Maybe it was over. Maybe whatever had been walking out there had gone back to wherever it came from. Then the doorknob rattled. I shot up, knocking over my chair. The knob twisted, turned, asterisk, but the door didn't open asterisk. It stayed locked. The rattling stopped, but I could hear something. A faint, shuffling sound like someone pressing up against the other side. Then came a soft, deliberate tap, just like before. I took a step back. Another. My mouth was dry, my palms slick with sweat. I clutched the journal like it was a lifeline. I needed to leave. No. But the moment I turned, the knocking came again. Asterisk, louder, asterisk, more urgent. The entire door shook in its frame. Bang. Bang. Bang, asterisk. I ran. I didn't stop until I was downstairs in the kitchen. My hands braced against the counter as I tried to steady my breathing. The house was quiet again. The only sound was the ticking of the broken grandfather clock in the living room. The one that shouldn't be working. My mind raced. I needed to get out. Just grab my keys, drive to a motel. Hell, sleep in my car if I had to. But then my eyes landed on the journal again. Don't open the door. I needed to know why. Mrs. Callahan had said the last tenants ran out in the middle of the night. The landlord refused to talk about it. The journal writer had been terrified of whatever was inside that room. And yet, the door was still locked, Whatever had tried to get out, hadn't. And then a thought struck me. What if it wasn't trying to get out? What if something was trying to keep it in? A chill ran through me. I grabbed my phone, Googling the address. There had to be something. News reports. Urban legends. Anything. I found it. A small article buried in the archives of a local paper. September 5th, 1957. Local man vanishes in home on Wren Street. The details were vague. A man named Arthur Bell had bought the house earlier that year. Neighbors reported hearing strange noises, seeing lights flickering at odd hours. Then one night Bell was heard screaming. When police arrived, the house was empty. No sign of forced entry. No body Just a locked room with scratch marks on the inside of the door. I closed the article, my hands shaking. A noise crept through the silence. A slow, rhythmic scratching sound. Coming from inside the walls. Coming from all around me. Then from upstairs. Click. The sound of a lock turning. The door was open. And something had just stepped out. I didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at me to grab my keys, bolt out the front door, and never come back. But some sick, twisted part of my brain wouldn't let me move. I just stood there, heart pounding, listening. The house was holding its breath. Then, a step, a single, slow step on the upstairs landing. I swallowed hard. My phone was still open in my trembling hand, the dim screen casting just enough light to make out the base of the staircase. Then came another step. And another. It was coming down. I fumbled for the light switch, fingers slick with sweat. The bulbs overhead flickered, buzzed, and then died. The house plunged into darkness. I turned on my phone's flashlight, aiming it toward the stairs. The beam barely cut through the gloom, illuminating the old wooden steps one by one. The top step was empty, but I could feel it. Something was there, standing just beyond the light, watching me. I took a shaky step back, my foot hitting a loose floorboard. The creak echoed through the silence, and then it moved. A shadow shifted on the landing, too tall, too thin. It moved in a way that wasn't right, like its bones were bending the wrong way. Its footsteps were heavy, dragging. I aimed my light higher, up toward its face, and the second the beam touched it, it vanished. I gasped, my breath ragged. My pulse roared in my ears. Then, wham, something slammed into the wall just inches away, hard enough to rattle the picture frames. My flashlight flickered. I turned, nothing, Another bang, this time from the kitchen. The cabinets burst open, dishes crashing to the floor. The whole house shuddered like it was trying to shake me loose. I ran. I didn't think, I just sprinted for the front door, yanking it open so hard it nearly ripped off the hinges. The night air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp, but I didn't stop. I bolted across the yard, heart hammering, not daring to look back until I was standing in the middle of the street. The house loomed behind me, its windows dark. Empty. Silent. Like nothing had happened. But something had. I stood there, panting, my hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped my phone. A notification flashed on the screen. One new voicemail. I hesitated. I didn't remember my phone ringing. With a deep breath, I pressed play. At first, there was nothing but static. Then, a voice. Low, rasping, barely more than a whisper. You shouldn't have opened the door. The message ended. I stared at my phone, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. I hadn't opened the door, but something had. And now it was out. I didn't go back inside. I stood in the middle of the street, cold air biting through my clothes, my pulse hammering like a war drum. The house was quiet again. No flickering lights, no footsteps, no whispers. But I felt it. Somewhere in the dark, behind those windows, it was watching me. I needed to leave. Now, I stumbled toward my car, fumbling with the keys. My hands were still shaking, slick with sweat, and I nearly dropped them twice before I jammed the right one into the ignition. The engine choked, then died. No. I turned the key again. Clicked nothing. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel. The house loomed in the rearview mirror, its front door still wide open. An invitation. Or a warning. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding. I'd call a friend, an Uber, anyone, but when I looked at the screen, my stomach dropped. No service. The signal bar was completely gone. Not even a single dot. I stared at it, my breath coming in shallow gasps. That didn't make sense. I had full service when I stepped outside. How the hell? Something moved in the mirror. a dark shape shifting at the edge of the porch. I went rigid. The figure was tall, too tall, its limbs stretched out like they didn't belong to a person at all. Its head tilted, slow and unnatural, as if it was trying to see me better. My fingers clenched around the keys. I looked up. Nothing was there. Just the empty doorway yawning open like a black mouth. A sharp knock slammed against my driver's side window. I screamed. Whipping around, my flashlight beam hit, Mrs. Callahan, I gasped for air, my whole body shaking. She stood outside my car, bundled in a thick sweater, her face pale and grim in the glow of my phone. I rolled the window down an inch, my breath still ragged. She looked at me, then at the house. "You saw it, didn't you?" she murmured. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "Come on," she said, stepping back. "Come inside. Before it decides to come closer." I hesitated, my skin crawling. I didn't want to go anywhere near another dark house right now. But there was something in her eyes, something serious. She knew. I grabbed my phone and followed her across the street, my legs unsteady beneath me. She ushered me inside quickly, shutting the door, locking both deadbolts. The house smelled like peppermint tea and mothballs. Cozy. But my nerves were still on fire. She led me to the kitchen, pulled out a chair. "Sit," she ordered. I sat. She poured tea, slid a cup in front of me. I didn't drink it. I just stared at her, waiting for her to speak. Finally she did. "That house is wrong," she said, stirring her tea absently. "Always has been." I swallowed, my throat dry. "What the hell is in there?" Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. "It's not in there anymore," she said. A chill crawled down my spine. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "You let it out." I shook my head. "I didn't open the door. I swear." She raised a hand, silencing me. "Doesn't matter. The lock wasn't meant to keep you out, it was meant to keep it in." The words sank in, cold and heavy. I thought about the footsteps, the whispers, the knocking. The journal. I made a mistake. I let it out, ***. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. What does it want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Callahan's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked down at her hands as if choosing her next words carefully. Then she said, "It follows?" The blood drained from my face. She continued, her voice low and even. "I don't know what it is. Nobody does. But I know this, it attaches itself to people. It doesn't stay in the house. Not once it's been let out." I shook my head. No, that's not possible. It's in the house." Her gaze darkened. "Have you checked your back seat?" My stomach plummeted. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Mrs. Callahan reached across the table, gripping my wrist. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You need to leave. Get as far away from here as you can. And whatever you do, don't look back, The wind outside howled, rattling the windows. And somewhere, from deep in the night, I heard knocking. I didn't sleep. Mrs. Callahan let me crash on her couch, but there was no way in hell I was closing my eyes. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my pulse thudding in my ears. Somewhere outside, the wind moaned. Somewhere closer, I swore I could hear breathing. I told myself it was my imagination. That Mrs. Callahan's words had just gotten into my head. That I wasn't really hearing the slow, ragged sound of something waiting. Watching. I stayed like that for hours, clutching my phone, waiting for the first signs of daylight. When the sky finally started to turn pale blue, I forced myself up, joints stiff from lying still too long. Mrs. Callahan was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a steaming cup of tea. She looked up when she saw me. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "Today?" She just sighed as if she'd expected it. "That's good." She paused, swirling her tea. "Do you remember what I told you?" I swallowed. "Don't look back." Her face was grave. "No matter what you hear. No matter what you think you see. Just keep driving." A chill slithered through me. I gave her a tight nod and muttered a quick thanks before heading for the door. I hesitated with my hand on the knob, heart hammering. What if it was already waiting? I squeezed my eyes shut, took a breath, and stepped outside. The street was quiet. Too quiet, no cars. No birds. The world felt hollow, like something had sucked the sound out of the air. The house loomed across the street, its windows dark. Empty. But the front door, the one I left open, was shut. I didn't go near it. Didn't check. I just climbed into my car, locked the doors, and turned the key. This time the engine started. Relief washed through me. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. staring straight ahead as I eased out of the driveway. Don't look back. I forced my eyes on the road as I passed the house, fighting every urge to glance at it one last time. Don't look back. I drove past the edge of town, the trees blurring outside my windows. My breath started to come easier. The tension in my shoulders eased. Maybe it was over. The tap asterisk asterisk. A soft, deliberate knock. From inside the car. A shudder ran through me. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles aching. Keep driving. Don't stop. Don't look asterisk asterisk. Another knock. Then, asterisk asterisk breathing asterisk asterisk. Oh, shallow. Right behind me. My vision blurred. My hands were so slick with sweat I could barely hold the wheel. My entire body screamed at me to turn around to just take one quick glance in the rearview mirror. But Mrs. Callahan's voice echoed in my head. Underscore no matter what you hear. No matter what you think you see. Just keep driving. Underscore. I bit my tongue hard until I tasted blood. And I drove. The knocking stopped. The breathing faded. But the feeling never left. That crawling, ice-cold certainty that something was still back there. Sitting in my backseat. Waiting. I don't know how long I drove. Hours maybe. I didn't stop until I saw a motel on the edge of nowhere. I pulled into the parking lot, my legs shaking as I stumbled out of the car. I still didn't look back. Not until I was inside my room, door locked, lights on. And when I finally turned to face the mirror, I saw it. A dark shape, too tall, too thin, standing in the corner of the room. Smiling. I stopped breathing. The thing in the mirror grinned. His teeth were too white, too sharp. Its face was long and hollow, skin stretched too tight over its bones. It didn't blink, didn't move, but it was watching me. I took a slow step back. My knees hit the bed, nearly sending me sprawling. My phone was still clenched in my hand, but I didn't dare look away long enough to call anyone. I didn't even know who I'd call. The thing's head tilted, slow and unnatural. My stomach twisted. It was mimicking me. I swallowed hard. Maybe it was just my reflection. A trick of the dim motel light. Maybe I was exhausted, hallucinating after everything that had happened. But then it moved, and I didn't. My breath hitched. The thing lifted its hand. My hand stayed at my side. It wasn't my reflection. I let out a strangled gasp and lurched forward, grabbing the motel's cheap floral comforter and throwing it over the mirror. For a second, the room was silent. The tap asterisk asterisk. I jerked back, my stomach dropping. The soft, deliberate knock came from behind the glass. Something inside the mirror. Watching. Waiting. Knocking asterisk asterisk. I forced myself to breathe. To think. Mrs. Callahan's voice rang in my head. Underscore you let it out. Underscore. I squeezed my eyes shut. It had followed me. I didn't know how or what it wanted or if I'd ever be free of it, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't look. I turned away from the mirror and grabbed my bag. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely shove my clothes inside. The knocking continued. I ignored it. Thump. Thump asterisk asterisk. Louder now. I kept packing, heart slamming against my ribs. The mirror shattered. I spun around, choking on a scream. The blanket had fallen to the floor. The mirror was nothing but a jagged, empty frame. And the thing? It was gone. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps. I backed toward the door, every nerve screaming at me to run. I fumbled with the lock, my fingers slick with sweat. Then the lights flickered, and I felt it, right behind me. A whisper slithered against my ear, ice cold and grinning. You looked? The bulb burst. The room was plunged into darkness, and something grabbed me. I couldn't move. Cold fingers wrapped around my wrist. They weren't solid. Not entirely. They felt like mist and bone, thin and wrong, pressing into my skin like something that shouldn't exist in this world. I opened my mouth to scream, but a second hand clamped over it. Asterisk asterisk, too big, too strong, asterisk asterisk. The room was pitch black. My body convulsed, every instinct screaming at me to run, fight, bite, anything, but I was frozen. A third hand, asterisk asterisk, God, how many hands did it have? Asterisk asterisk, gripped the back of my neck, cold and wet, pressing its fingers into my spine like it was trying to find a way inside. Then, a voice. Not a whisper this time. Not a breath against my ear. A voice. Oh, hollow. Smiling. You shouldn't have looked. And then it laughed. It was a terrible sound, deep and broken, like something rattling inside an empty chest. The fingers around my wrist tightened. My breath hitched. It was pulling me. The dark around me shifted, deepened. Asterisk asterisk, no, not the dark. The mirror asterisk asterisk. I was being pulled into it. I thrashed, kicked, tried to scream. The hands held tight. I could feel something behind me, a weight, a presence, a grin. I was going to die. No, I wouldn't. I forced every ounce of strength into my arms and ripped free. I stumbled forward, hitting the motel dresser hard enough to bruise. My hand flew to the lamp, knocking it over in my panic before I finally fumbled the switch. Light. The moment the glow filled the room, the hands let go, I spun around, gasping, heart slamming against my ribs. The mirror was whole again. Not shattered. Not broken. Just there. A smooth, clean reflection of the room. Of the lamp. Of the door. Of me. I stood there panting. My wrist ached. I lifted it and froze. Fingerprints. Dark, bruised, already forming, but not mine, I stared. The air in the room was thick, heavy, pressing in on me like the walls were leaning closer. I had to leave. I grabbed my bag and ran. The road out. I drove without thinking, without stopping, without looking in the mirrors. My hands were slick with sweat against the wheel. My mind raced. What the hell had I let out? What did it want? I pressed my foot harder on the gas, heart hammering, desperate to put as much distance as I could between me and that thing. The bruises on my wrist burned. I didn't stop until I saw the neon glow of a gas station sign. I pulled in too fast, tires screeching. The place was mostly empty, just a single car parked near the entrance. I cut the engine and slumped forward, pressing my forehead against the wheel. Breathe. I had to pull myself together. I couldn't keep running forever. I sat there for a long time before finally forcing myself to move. I climbed out of the car and headed inside. The clerk, a guy in his 50s with tired eyes and a name tag that read Frank, barely glanced up as I walked in. I grabbed a bottle of water, some snacks, anything to ground myself. I moved toward the counter, fishing for my wallet. Then I saw it. The security monitor. A grainy black and white feed of the parking lot. Of my car. Of someone sitting in the back seat. I dropped the bottle. My stomach flipped. Frank looked up. "You okay?" I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. The thing in my back seat tilted its head. I turned, too fast, too desperate, The lot was empty. My car was empty. But on the screen, it was still there, smiling. I ran. I didn't think, didn't breathe. I bolted for my car, nearly slipping on the asphalt in my panic. My keys were already in my hand and I fumbled with the lock, fingers shaking so bad I could barely grip the handle. By the time I wrenched the door open, I knew I had made a mistake. The air inside was wrong. Heavy, stale, occupied. I hesitated, just for a second. Tap, Not from inside the car. From behind me. My breath caught. I turned slowly, pulse hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. Frank was standing in the doorway of the gas station looking at me. But his face was wrong. His eyes were just a little too wide. His mouth was just a little too stretched, like his skin didn't fit quite right. He raised one hand, slow and jerky, and he knocked on the air between us. Tap. I stumbled back. No, this wasn't happening. I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body shaking. This isn't real. When I opened them again, Frank was gone. The gas station was dark. The neon sign flickered, buzzing weakly. The store, the one I had been inside just minutes ago, looked abandoned, like it had been empty for years. I turned and threw myself into the car, locking the doors, shoving the key into the ignition. The car didn't start. A sound filled the silence. Breathing. Right behind me. I stared straight ahead. My fingers clenched around the steering wheel, my whole body frozen in pure ice-cold terror. I couldn't look. I wouldn't. A whisper slithered through the dark, curling around my ear like cold breath. "You can't run forever." I let out a strangled sob and turned the key again, harder this time. The engine roared to life. I slammed my foot on the gas, peeling out of the parking lot so fast my tires screeched against the pavement. The gas station faded in the rearview mirror, disappearing into the night like it had never been there at all. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. Mile after mile, the road stretched ahead of me, empty and endless. I kept my eyes forward, my grip on the wheel so tight my fingers started to cramp. But the feeling never left. That presence. That awful, grinning thing sitting in the back seat, waiting. Hashtag the last call. It was nearly dawn when I finally pulled into a rest stop. My body ached, exhaustion dragging at my bones. My mind felt raw, stretched thin, fraying. I needed help. I grabbed my phone with stiff fingers and dialed the only number I could think of. Mrs. Callahan answered on the first ring. "You looked, didn't you?" she said. My breath hitched. "Please," I whispered. "Tell me how to stop this." There was a long pause. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "You can't." A chill crawled down my spine. She exhaled shakily. "It's with you now. You let it out and it's never going back." I shook my head, panic rising. "There has to be a way." "There isn't." Her voice was firm, final. A lump formed in my throat. "Then what do I do?" Silence. Then softly, "You keep running?" My stomach dropped. Mrs. Callahan let out a shaky breath. "Don't stay anywhere too long. Don't sleep in the dark. Don't trust what you see." I gripped the phone so hard my fingers ached. "For how long?" Another pause. Then, the line went dead, I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen. No service. No. I turned the key, desperate to get back on the road. But the engine wouldn't start. And in the rearview mirror, something moved. Not a shadow. Not a trick of the light. A figure. Sitting in the back seat. Grinning. The last thing I heard before the world went black. Tap. I woke to silence. Thick, heavy, suffocating silence. My head throbbed. My limbs felt leaden, my skin ice cold. My breath came in short, uneven gasps, every nerve in my body screaming that something was wrong. I was still in the car. But the world outside wasn't right. The rest stop was gone. No street lights. No road. Just an endless, empty black stretching in every direction, swallowing the world. I swallowed hard, pulse hammering. My fingers gripped the steering wheel like a lifeline. And then, tap. From inside the car. I didn't turn. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. A whisper slithered through the dark, curling against my ear like something wet and grinning. "We have all the time in the world." The air shifted. The temperature dropped. And then, the mirror changed, It wasn't reflecting the car anymore. It was reflecting a room. A familiar one. The house. My old bedroom. The door stood slightly open, just like it had that first night. The bed was unmade, the lamp on the nightstand still flickering weakly. And standing in the doorway was me. A version of me staring back with wide, unblinking eyes. But something was wrong. The reflection wasn't breathing. And then, it grinned. "Come back," it whispered. The glass cracked. I screamed. The darkness outside the car rushed in. The last thing I saw was my reflection crawling through the mirror, reaching for me. Epilogue, vacancy. The house sat empty. For a while. Then one day a moving truck pulled up. A young couple stepped out, smiling, excited, oblivious. They carried in boxes, talked about paint colors, admired the old woodwork. That first night, the wife swore she heard something in the walls. The husband laughed. "Old houses make noise." She nodded. Tried to ignore the feeling that something was watching. That night, the bedroom door creaked open. And from the mirror, tap. Smiling. Waiting. Watching Story 3. I should have known better. Everyone says that, right? In hindsight, all the signs were there. The too good to be true price. The way the realtor never quite met my eyes. The lingering scent of something stale, like damp wood and forgotten time. But when you're desperate for a fresh start, you overlook things. You tell yourself that a little creak in the floorboards is just part of the house's charm. That the cold draft is just bad insulation. That the shadows pooling in the corners of empty rooms are just tricks of the light. It started the moment I stepped inside. The house was old, older than any I'd ever lived in. A towering Victorian relic squatting at the end of Blackwood Lane, its warped wooden porch groaning under my weight as I crossed to the front door. The paint was peeling, the windows cloudy with dust. It had been empty for a long time, or at least that's what the realtor said. I was freshly divorced, licking my wounds from a marriage that had disintegrated like paper in the rain. I needed space. A place that was mine, where no memories clung to the walls like ghosts of arguments past. This house was cheap, roomy, and available immediately. That's all that mattered at the time. I signed the lease, collected the keys, and moved in on a brisk October morning, hauling my life, packed into cardboard boxes, through the heavy wooden door. The moment I stepped inside, the air felt different. The as if I'd just walked into a space that didn't quite belong to me. But I shook off the feeling. It was just a house after all. The floors groaned beneath my feet as I explored. The layout was strange, narrow hallways that twisted in unexpected directions, doors that stuck in their frames as if they didn't want to be opened. The upstairs had a single long corridor with 5 rooms, all empty except for one, the master bedroom. That first night I barely slept. The house was noisy. Not in the way old houses usually are, with the occasional pop of settling wood. No, this was different. This was rhythmic, deliberate. Footsteps. Soft, measured, pacing along the upstairs hallway. I told myself it was my imagination. That stress and exhaustion were playing tricks on me. I buried my head under the covers and forced myself to sleep. The next morning, I met Mrs. Downing. She was my next-door neighbor, a thin woman with skin like crumpled paper and watery blue eyes that flicked toward my house with something close to pity. She stood at the edge of my driveway as I wrestled a heavy box out of my trunk. "You moved in fast," she said. I nodded. "Needed a place quick. Got lucky with this one." She didn't smile. Instead, she glanced toward the house, her expression unreadable. "They never last long." A chill ran down my spine. "What?" "The people who live there," she said. "They never stay. Some leave after a few months. Some after only weeks." I swallowed hard, forcing a laugh. "Let me guess. It's haunted?" Mrs. Downing didn't laugh. I waited for her to say more, but she just shook her head and turned away, muttering something under her breath as she walked back to her house. That night, the footsteps returned. I didn't leave my room right away. I stood there, staring at the footprints in the dust. They started at the end of the hallway and stopped right at my bedroom door. No return prints. No sign that anyone, or anything, had walked away. Just a single path leading to where I had been sleeping. I told myself it had to be me. Maybe I had gotten up in the night and forgotten. Maybe I had been half asleep, wandering in some daze, then returned to bed without remembering. But even as I told myself that, I knew it wasn't true. I would have seen them last night. I swallowed hard and forced myself forward, stepping over the prints as I made my way to the bathroom. I needed to shake this off. A shower, some coffee, something to ground me. But as I turned on the faucet, I hesitated. The mirror above the sink was slightly fogged, though I hadn't even turned on the hot water yet. The condensation looked wrong. I stepped closer. The fog wasn't random. It was streaked, smeared in long, dragging lines, asterisk asterisk, as if someone had run their fingers down the glass from the inside, asterisk asterisk. A chill raced up my spine. I wiped my sleeve over the surface, clearing it, but the unease stuck to me. By the time I left for work, I had convinced myself I was just being paranoid. Old houses make noise. Old houses settle. Old houses have drafts, asterisk asterisk. But old houses don't make footprints. Hashtag hashtag hashtag. I work at a small marketing firm in town. It's nothing special, just a desk job that pays the bills. I had moved here for a fresh start, and so far I was regretting it. By the time lunch rolled around, I was restless. The morning had been a blur, my thoughts stuck in that house. The footprints, the fogged mirror, the feeling that someone had been in my room. I needed to talk to someone. I grabbed my phone and dialed my sister Claire. She picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hey, stranger." "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Got a minute?" "For you? Always." "How's the new place?" I hesitated. Weird how? I hesitated again, then sighed. "It's probably nothing, but I keep hearing things at night." And this morning, I found footprints in the dust outside my bedroom door. There was silence on the other end. Then Claire said, "You sure they weren't yours?" That's what I thought at first, but they only go one way. More silence. Then a soft exhale. "Maybe you should get the locks changed?" That hadn't even occurred to me. I had assumed I was alone in that house. But what if I wasn't? What if someone else had a key? "I'll do that," I said, trying to shake the unease creeping up my spine. We talked for a few more minutes before I hung up, feeling slightly better. Maybe Claire was right. Maybe there was a logical explanation. That night, I stopped by a hardware store on my way home and bought new locks. I spent an hour swapping them out, double-checking the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. Then I went to bed. Hashtag hashtag hashtag. At 3:07 a.m., I woke up to the sound of someone breathing. My eyes snapped open. The room was dark, but something was wrong. The air was heavy, thick, with an awful, damp smell, like mildew and something metallic, something rotting. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The breathing wasn't mine. It was slow, ragged, coming from the hallway just outside my door. A faint creak, then another. Footsteps. I squeezed my eyes shut. It's just the house settling. Just the house settling asterisk asterisk. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. I listened, waiting, heart hammering in my chest. And then, the doorknob twisted. I shot upright, gasping, scrambling for my phone. My hands were shaking as I fumbled to turn on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, landing on the door. The knob was still. I sat there for a long time, barely daring to breathe. The house was silent again, but the smell lingered. Finally, I forced myself to get up. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a metal lamp from the nightstand, and yanked open the door. The hallway was empty, but the footprints were back. Only this time they weren't in the dust. This time they were wet. Dark, damp imprints leading from the far end of the hall, straight to my bedroom door. I turned my flashlight toward the end of the hallway. The shadows pooled in the corners, thick and unmoving. And then, for the briefest second, I saw him. A figure standing at the very end of the hallway. Tall. Too tall, asterisk asterisk. His arms hung unnaturally long at his sides, fingers twitching. His face was hidden in shadow, but I could feel him watching me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then, he took a step forward. The floor groaned beneath his weight. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. Hashtag. The next morning, I left the house in a hurry, locking the door behind me and not looking back. I needed answers. I drove straight to the library, hands shaking as I typed my address into the search database. I didn't know what I was expecting. Some newspaper clipping about a break-in? Maybe an old article about a crime that had happened there? But what I found was worse. The house had belonged to Arthur Blackwood. I recognized the name immediately. I had heard it before, whispered in old ghost stories. He was an occultist, a recluse who had lived in the house decades ago. And he had disappeared. No body. No trace, just vanished. But before he did, he had been obsessed with summoning something. Something he never should have called. I stared at the newspaper article, heart pounding. There was a photo, grainy, black and white, of Arthur Blackwood standing in front of the house. His face was shadowed, unreadable. But his body, he was tall. Too tall. I didn't go back to the house right away. After finding that article, I sat in the library parking lot for nearly an hour, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Arthur Blackwood. I had heard the name before, years ago, probably in some late-night internet rabbit hole. The name came up in urban legends, old stories about a man obsessed with the occult. He had lived in isolation, studying forbidden texts, performing rituals that no one should ever attempt. And then one day he vanished. No body, no trace, just gone. But something stayed. I rubbed a hand over my face, trying to steady my breathing. I'm being ridiculous, it was just a house. A weird, old house with a history. That didn't mean anything was wrong. But deep down, I knew better. I thought about the footprints in the dust. The wet ones last night. The thing in the hallway. And I thought about the doorknob turning on its own. I shuddered and turned on my car, deciding I needed more information. Hashtag. I found the neighbor outside when I got back. His name was Mr. Holloway, an older man with thinning white hair and a permanent frown. He lived across the street and always seemed to be watching from his porch, a cigarette dangling from his lips. I had only spoken to him once when I moved in. Now, I jogged across the street and waved him down. "Hey," I called. "Can I ask you something?" He narrowed his eyes, exhaling a long trail of smoke. "You want to know about the house?" His voice was rough, like gravel scraping against metal. I hesitated. "Yeah." He gave me a long look, then shook his head. "Should have burned it down years ago." A chill prickled my skin. "Why?" I asked carefully. He exhaled again, watching the smoke curl into the sky. "People don't stay there," he muttered. "Not for long. They hear things, see things, always leave in a hurry. Some of them," he stopped, shaking his head. "Doesn't matter. You won't last either." The certainty in his voice made my stomach turn. I swallowed hard. "Who lived there before me?" "Couple," he said. "Young. Moved out in the middle of the night. Woman was screaming, said something was watching her from the dark." He gave me a look. "Sound familiar?" I didn't answer. Mr. Holloway snorted. "I'll give you some advice, kid. Don't go digging, some things are better left buried." I thought about the article. About Arthur Blackwood. And then I thought about the footsteps outside my door. I nodded and mumbled a thanks before heading back inside. Hashtag. The house felt wrong when I stepped inside. The air was thick, stale, it smelled damp, like something had been left in the dark too long. I locked the door behind me and took a slow breath. I needed to check something. I grabbed a roll of flour from the kitchen and walked straight to my bedroom door. If something was walking in my house, I'd catch it. I poured a thin line of flour across the threshold, then did the same for the hallway. It was stupid, but it made me feel in control. Then I went to the attic. I hadn't spent much time up there. Just a small, dusty space with an old wooden floor and a single window. But something about it bothered me. I pulled down the attic ladder, wincing as the old hinges groaned. The space was colder than I expected, and as I climbed up, my breath misted in the air. The attic was mostly empty, just a few boxes shoved against the wall. But something was wrong. The dust. There was a trail through it, like something had been dragged across the floor. My pulse quickened. I followed the trail to the far wall, where a loose floorboard stuck up at an odd angle. Slowly I knelt and pried it up. Inside the gap was a book. It was old, bound in cracked leather. My fingers trembled as I lifted it out and turned it over. The name on the front was faded, but I could still make it out. Arthur Blackwood. ####. That night I read the journal. Most of it was nonsense. Ramblings about rituals, symbols, ancient texts. But some pages stood out. It watches me at night. I hear it breathing. The ritual is complete. The door is open. I see it standing in the hallway. My hands were ice cold as I turned the pages. I can't sleep. It stands outside my door. If I move, it will come inside. A shiver ran through me. My room suddenly felt too quiet. I flipped another page. It doesn't walk like we do. It's waiting for me to open the door. My stomach twisted. Then, thump. I froze. Thump. It was coming from the hallway. Slow. Heavy. My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, but I couldn't. Thump. The footsteps stopped outside my door. I stared at the line of flour I had poured earlier, and then, the footprints appeared. Not slowly, not gradually, all at once. One moment the flour was smooth and untouched. The next, ***, too deep, wet imprints appeared just outside my door, ***. My hand shook. I gripped the journal tighter. Then, the doorknob started to turn. The doorknob twisted, slowly, deliberately. I sat frozen on the bed, the journal clenched in my hands. My breath came in short, shallow gasps as I watched the knob rattle, like someone on the other side was testing it, seeing if it was unlocked. It wasn't, but that didn't make me feel any safer. The footprints were still there, wet and sunken into the flour. I hadn't heard them approach. Hadn't heard anything at all, just the sound of that single awful step before silence swallowed the house. And now it was at my door. I forced myself to move, slowly. Carefully, ***, I reached for my phone on the nightstand, keeping my eyes locked on the door. 3:13 a.m. The same time I had woken up the night before. I tapped Claire's name in my contacts, my thumb shaking as I pressed the call button. The ringing sounded too loud in the silence. Come on. Hello? Her voice was thick with sleep. I opened my mouth to speak, and then, the breathing started. Slow. What? Coming from just outside the door. I choked back a gasp. Hello? Claire's voice sharpened. Are you okay? I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was too afraid to make a sound. The breathing grew louder, heavier. Like something massive was crouched outside my room waiting. Then, a sharp, dragging sound. My stomach turned. It wasn't footsteps. It was something pulling itself across the floor. I squeezed my eyes shut, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. The sound stopped. The breathing stopped. Silence. My whole body trembled. And then, from the other end of the line, "Are you alone?" Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. She sucked in a breath. There's something wrong with your call. I can hear," she trailed off. Goosebumps crawled up my arms. "Hear what?" I whispered. Static crackled over the line. And then, a third voice. Oh, guttural, just one word. "Open." I threw the phone across the room. The second it hit the floor, ***, the doorknob stopped turning, ***. Everything was still. Silent. For a long time, I didn't move. I just sat there, my pulse pounding in my ears. Eventually, I forced myself to look at the door. The footprints were gone. No smudges. No trail. Just a smooth, untouched layer of flour. Like nothing had ever been there at all. But I knew better. ###. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I packed a bag and drove to a motel on the other side of town. I told myself I just needed a break. A night away from that house. But deep down, I knew the truth. I was afraid to go back. I spent most of the day researching Arthur Blackwood, digging into every old newspaper and internet forum I could find. There wasn't much, just the same vague rumors about occult practices and his disappearance. But then I found something new. A post buried in an old paranormal forum. Arthur Blackwood didn't disappear. He was taken. My blood ran cold. I kept reading. He opened something. Let something in. And once he saw it, asterisk asterisk. It saw him too. I shut my laptop with a snap. The motel room suddenly felt too small. The walls too close. I rubbed a hand over my face trying to steady my breathing. And then, my phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. A message from an unknown number. Just 2 words. Don't look. A knock at the motel door. Soft, slow, thump. My stomach twisted. Thump. I backed away from the door, my breath coming fast and sharp. The message flashed in my mind. Don't look. Don't look. I squeezed my eyes shut and pressed myself against the wall. My heart slammed against my ribs as the knocking grew louder. Then, silence. When I finally opened my eyes, the room was empty. But my phone screen was still on, the message glaring up at me. And beneath it, a new one. It followed you. I stared at the message on my phone. It followed you. My fingers trembled as I hovered over the screen. I wanted to type something back. Asterisk asterisk, who is this? What do you mean? Asterisk asterisk. But deep down I already knew. It wasn't just in the house anymore. It was here. The motel room suddenly felt too small. The air was thick and heavy, pressing against my skin like damp cloth. And then, the lights flickered. A single, sharp pop, and the bulb in the lamp beside the bed burst, glass shattered across the nightstand. I gasped, stumbling back against the wall. Then came the breathing. Slow. What? Like something massive was inside the room. I squeezed my eyes shut. Don't look. Don't look, asterisk asterisk. The floor creaked. My breath caught in my throat. It was moving closer. Step, step, pause. Then, the bed creaked, like something had just sat down. The sound was inches from me. I gripped my phone so hard my nails dug into my palm. My body was shaking, every nerve screaming at me to move, to run. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because then, it whispered my name. The voice was wrong, like someone was trying to mimic human speech but didn't quite understand how. You left. My stomach twisted. You left, but I followed. I sucked in a sharp breath. My skin felt ice cold, my limbs stiff with terror. And then, right beside my ear. Open. My eyes snapped open. The room was empty. The lamp was shattered, the curtains swaying slightly like they'd just been touched. But there was no one there. And yet, the bed was still indented. Like something was still sitting on it. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I left the motel at dawn. I didn't sleep. I barely even blinked, afraid that if I closed my eyes, I'd hear it again. Asterisk, asterisk, the breathing, the dragging sound, the voice, asterisk, asterisk. I drove aimlessly for hours trying to clear my head. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real, asterisk, asterisk. But the footprints in the flour had been real. The whisper had been real. The bruises on my arms, from when it touched me, were real. And then there was the journal. Arthur Blackwood's warnings. It doesn't walk like we do. It's waiting for me to open the door. It watches me at night. I pulled into a gas station and sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel. I had to go back. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to know. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The house felt different when I stepped inside. It wasn't just the silence, it was the feeling. Like something had been expecting me. The air was thick, still. The moment I closed the door, the floorboards groaned beneath my feet, like the house was breathing. I turned on every light as I moved through the rooms. The living room, the kitchen, nothing had changed. Then I went to the bedroom and stopped cold. The flour. The footprints were back. But this time they didn't just stop at the door. They went inside, right up to the bed, right up to where I slept. My stomach lurched, and then I saw it. The journal. It was open on the bed. I hadn't left it like that. I stepped closer, my pulse thudding in my ears. One passage had been circled. It comes closer when you notice it. It becomes stronger when you acknowledge it. I swallowed hard. At the bottom of the page, in jagged handwriting that hadn't been there before. You're looking. A chill ran through me. Then, the door slammed shut. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I spun around, heart hammering. The air changed. It was no longer just cold. It was freezing. The hairs on my arms stood on end. And then, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room, thick and absolute. I couldn't see, couldn't move. Then, the sound. Dragging. Coming from the corner of the room. My breathing turned shallow. My body felt paralyzed with fear. It was here, and it was watching. The sound came closer. Shoo-shoo-shoo. Not footsteps. Not walking. Dragging. Something pulling itself toward me. A whisper too close to my ear. "I see you." I bolted. I didn't think, didn't look back. I just ran, nearly tripping as I yanked the door open and stumbled into the hallway. The walls groaned. The floor shuddered beneath my feet. The house was wrong. I ran down the stairs, every muscle in my body screaming at me to move faster, faster. And then I heard it. Not behind me. Not above me, asterisk, asterisk. In front of me. I skidded to a stop. My breath hitched. The hallway was dark. Too dark, the kind of dark that wasn't just an absence of light. Asterisk, asterisk, it was something else, asterisk, asterisk. And then, from that darkness, two hands reached out. Long twisted. Not human, asterisk, asterisk. And they pulled me in. They yanked me forward. I had no time to react. No time to scream. One moment I was standing in the hallway, staring into that unnatural darkness. The next I was being pulled inside. The air turned suffocating. Thick. Rotten like damp earth and something deeper. Asterisk, asterisk, something dead, asterisk, asterisk. My body twisted as I tried to break free, but the hands were strong. They weren't just pulling me forward. They were pulling me down. The floor beneath my feet wasn't wood anymore. It was dirt. No, worse than dirt. It was soft, like something had been buried there. I struggled, clawing at the ground, my nails digging into the filth. But the more I fought, the stronger the pull became. Then, a whisper. "Let go." No, I wasn't going to die down here. I kicked out, my foot striking something solid. A crack split the air, bone breaking, flesh tearing. The grip loosened for half a second, and I seized the chance. I tore myself free. I scrambled backward, the dirt swallowing my hands as I clawed my way out of the dark. My lungs burned. My vision blurred. Then, I was in the hallway again. The floor beneath me was wood. The air was thin, stale, but real. Real. I gasped, rolling onto my back. My body ached. My skin was slick with sweat and something else. Something wet. I lifted my shaking hands. Black stains. Like ink. Or blood. I gagged, wiping my palms on my shirt, desperate to get it off. That was when I heard it. Scraping. Not behind me. Not above me. Below. I sucked in a sharp breath. The floor. The thing was beneath the floor. And it was moving. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I didn't sleep. I barely even moved. I sat in the kitchen with the lights on, the journal clutched in my hands. My mind raced. I had been inside something. Not just the darkness, something deeper. Older. A place that wasn't supposed to exist. And I hadn't been alone. It had touched me. It had tried to keep me. I flipped through the journal with numb fingers, rereading Arthur Blackwood's notes. Then I found something I had missed before. A passage near the back. One I swore hadn't been there yesterday. The door is open. A chill ran down my spine. I let it in. I tried to send it back, but it's stronger now. It knows I'm afraid. The handwriting changed. The careful, elegant script broke apart. The last lines were erratic, the words jagged and frantic. It doesn't want the house. It wants me. I swallowed hard. Arthur Blackwood had tried to stop it. He had failed. And now, it wanted me instead. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The next day I made a decision. I had to destroy the house. Burn it. Tear it down. Something. I didn't know if it would work. But I couldn't stay here. And I couldn't let anyone else move in. I spent the afternoon gathering everything flammable I could find. Lighter fluid, old newspapers, rags. My hands shook as I worked, but I didn't stop. By nightfall I was ready. I stood in the living room, staring at the open doorway to the hall. The footprints were back, leading from my bedroom, stopping right at the threshold. Waiting. I swallowed. Then I struck the match. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The flames spread fast. I backed toward the door, watching as the fire devoured the walls. Smoke curled toward the ceiling. The heat scorched my skin. And then, a sound. Oh, rumbling. At first I thought it was the fire. The wood groaning as it collapsed. But then I realized it was breathing. The house was breathing. A shadow shifted in the flames. I froze. It was there, in the fire. And it was laughing. Not loud. Not human. Just a soft, awful sound, like air being sucked through teeth. And then, the fire started to die. The flames shrank, the smoke thinned. Like something was swallowing it. No, asterisk, asterisk. I stumbled backward. This wasn't working. This was making it stronger. The air changed. Thick. Freezing. I turned to run, and then the door slammed shut. The laughter grew louder. Then came the whisper. "You can't leave. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag." I don't remember how I got out. One moment I was trapped, the next I was outside, standing in the dirt road, gasping for breath. The house was still there. Not burning. Not even touched by the flames. It stood in the darkness, its windows staring at me like empty eyes. And I knew in that moment, I hadn't escaped. Not really, because it was still with me. And it wasn't done yet. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. The town, the house, the thing inside it, asterisk, asterisk, I had to put distance between us, asterisk, asterisk. But as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, I felt it. That cold, crawling awareness, like someone was watching me. I checked the rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty, but my reflection, it wasn't right. For a second, just a split second, I thought I saw something behind me in the backseat. A shadow. Something tall. Wrong. Twisted, asterisk, asterisk. Then, gone. I clenched my teeth, forcing myself to breathe. I'm just paranoid. It's just stress, asterisk, asterisk. But deep down, I knew better. The house was miles away now. But it didn't matter, because I had brought it with me. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I stopped at another motel. A different town, far from that cursed house. It didn't help. The moment I stepped inside the room, I knew. It was already here. The feeling. The weight in the air. The silence that wasn't really silence. I sat on the bed, staring at the wallpaper. The patterns swirled in strange, unsettling shapes. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. And then, a knock. I jolted. It wasn't at the door. It was inside the room. The closet. My mouth went dry. Slowly I turned my head. The closet door was slightly ajar. Had it been like that when I walked in? I didn't remember. A sharp, suffocating pressure filled my chest. I wasn't alone. Something was in there. Waiting. Watching. The knock came again. Soft. Deliberate. I swallowed hard, forcing my body to move. I stood up. Walked toward the door. My heartbeat was deafening in my ears. I reached out and yanked it open. Nothing. Just an empty closet. For a second I almost laughed. But then I saw it. The footprints. Inside the closet. Facing outward. Like something had been standing there. Waiting for me to open the door. A cold, sick feeling coiled in my stomach. I stepped back, gripping the doorknob. And then, the light went out. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The darkness was instant. Thick. Wrong. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then, the breathing. Right next to me. A low, wet inhale. Exhale. Something was standing beside me. I felt it. Felt the cold radiating from it. Felt the weight of its presence pressing into me like something massive was leaning in. My skin crawled. Then, the whisper. Right against my ear. I never left. I ran. I didn't think. I just ran. Out of the room, down the hall, out into the night. I didn't stop until I was back in my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely shove the key into the ignition. The moment the engine roared to life, I peeled out of the parking lot, my heart slamming against my ribs. And in the rearview mirror, something moved in the motel window, watching me leave. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I drove until dawn. And the whole time I felt it, that creeping, suffocating presence. It wasn't just with me. It was inside me. I could feel it now, curling in the back of my mind like a second, unwelcome consciousness. Waiting. Whispering. I pulled over on the side of an empty road and gripped my head. Think asterisk, asterisk. How do you fight something that's already inside you? I thought of Arthur Blackwood. He had tried to get rid of it. He had failed. But what if he had left something behind? Something I hadn't found yet? There had to be a way. I wasn't going to let it take me. I wasn't going to end up like him. So I turned the car around, and I headed back to the house. Back to where it all began. The house was waiting for me. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt it the moment I pulled onto the road. Like it knew I was coming back. Like it had been expecting me. The windows loomed in the darkness, black and empty. I killed the engine and stepped out. The night was cold, but I was sweating. This was a mistake. But I didn't have a choice. I had to end this. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The front door wasn't locked. I hadn't locked it when I fled. I don't think it would have mattered if I had. I stepped inside. The air was different. Thicker. Denser, like something huge was pressing down on the walls, the floors, the ceiling. Like I had walked into the belly of something alive. I gritted my teeth and moved forward. The journal. That's why I was here. Arthur Blackwood's journal, his notes, his mistakes. I needed to find something, anything that could tell me how to stop this. But as I moved deeper into the house, something changed. The layout was wrong. The hallway stretched too long. The doors weren't where they were supposed to be. And at the end of the hall, a new door. One that had never been there before. I stopped. My pulse hammered against my ribs. The door was tall, black, and wrong. The kind of wrong that made my skin crawl, made my stomach twist with an ancient, instinctive fear. Something was behind it. Something waiting. But I had to know. I reached out, my fingers shaking, and touched the handle. It was ice cold. I twisted it, and the door opened. Hashtag. It wasn't a room. It was a void. A space that shouldn't exist. The walls were covered in writing, carved into the wood, into the floor, into the ceiling. Symbols, names, warnings, and at the center of the room, a chair. A single wooden chair. And in that chair, Arthur Blackwood. Or what was left of him. His body was withered, skin stretched too tight over sharp bones. His jaw hung open like he had died screaming. His eyes, black. Not rotted. Not decayed. Just pure, endless black. Like the house had taken them. Like it had kept something of him. A dry, raspy whisper filled the air. Not from his mouth. From the walls. From the house itself. Sit. I staggered backward, my breath coming in short, shallow gasps. No. The air shifted. Grew heavy. I felt something move behind me. Something tall. Watching. Smiling ***. I ran. Hashtag. The house didn't want me to leave. The hallway stretched longer. The doors twisted, disappeared, reappeared where they shouldn't be. The whispers grew louder. More voices now. Some begging. Some laughing. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I crashed through the front door, my body hitting the dirt. The night air burned my lungs. For a second I lay there gasping. Then, footsteps. Inside the house. Coming toward the door. I scrambled to my feet and ran. Hashtag. I don't remember getting in the car. I don't remember driving. But somehow I made it back to town. I pulled into a gas station and parked, my hands shaking so hard I couldn't turn off the engine. The attendant, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, glanced at me through the window. Something in my expression must have disturbed her. She came over, knocked on the glass. "Hey," she said. "You okay?" I opened my mouth and stopped, because in the reflection of the window, I wasn't alone. There was a shadow behind me, sitting in the back seat, tall, smiling, waiting. I squeezed my eyes shut. When I opened them, it was gone. But I knew the truth. I had left the house, but I hadn't escaped. It was still with me, and it always would be. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in my car at the gas station until the sun came up, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. It was still with me. Even now, in the daylight, I could feel it. That cold, creeping presence. Like something just behind me, just beyond my vision. Watching. Waiting. I needed help. Hashtag. I found myself at the town library. I don't remember deciding to go there. But suddenly, I was standing in front of it, my fingers gripping the rusted handle of the glass door. Inside, it smelled like dust and old paper. A few people milled around, oblivious to the horror curling inside me. I approached the front desk. The librarian, a thin woman with graying hair, looked up. "Can I help you?" My voice cracked. I need to see anything you have on Arthur Blackwood." She frowned. For a second, I thought she was going to tell me she didn't know the name. But then something shifted in her face. Recognition. And fear. "Why?" she asked, her voice quieter now. I hesitated. I could feel it then, curling inside me. Listening. Watching through my own eyes. I swallowed hard. "I just need to know." She held my gaze for a long moment. Then, without another word, she turned and disappeared into the archives. Hashtag. She returned with an old, faded newspaper. She placed it in front of me, tapping a shaking finger against the headline. "Local man found dead in house after weeks of isolation." There was a black and white photo beneath it. The house. My house. I scanned the article. Arthur Blackwood had been found sitting in that chair. His body decayed beyond what should have been possible in that short time. His cause of death? Unknown. But the details that mattered were at the bottom. Neighbors had reported strange noises coming from the house in the weeks leading up to his death. They had seen shadows moving behind the curtains. And one person, ***, a delivery man, ***, had reported seeing Blackwood through the window one night, just standing there, staring at the front door, mouth moving like he was whispering something. I felt sick. I turned back to the librarian. "You knew him?" I asked. She hesitated. Then slowly she nodded. "He came here once," she said. "Right before he—" She trailed off, shaking her head. I leaned forward. "What did he say?" She swallowed. Then, in a hushed voice, she whispered, "He said it knew his name." My body turned to ice, because I already knew what she was going to say next. She licked her lips, voice barely above a breath. "He said it was inside him." The room spun. I pushed away from the desk, my breath coming fast and shallow. The librarian reached out, concern flickering across her face. "Are you okay?" I turned and ran. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Back in my car, I sat with my forehead against the steering wheel. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. It knew my name, just like it knew his. And Arthur Blackwood had died in that chair. No, I wasn't going to end up like him. I wasn't going to sit down and let it take me. I needed to fight back. But how? Blackwood had tried, and he had failed. But maybe he left something behind. Something I hadn't found yet. I clenched my teeth. There was only one place left to look. The one place I hadn't dared to go. The basement. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I should have waited until morning. But I didn't. By the time I reached the house again, it was already dark. The air felt heavier, thicker. Like the house knew I was back. Like it was hungry. I stepped inside. The floor creaked beneath me. The door closed on its own. I didn't stop. I moved forward, toward the basement door. My hand shook as I reached for the knob. The moment my fingers touched it, a whisper slithered through the darkness. "Welcome home." The light flickered. The air turned freezing. I swallowed my fear and turned the knob. The door swung open with a slow, groaning creak. The basement yawned before me. What? Endless. I took a breath and stepped down into the dark. The basement swallowed me whole. The air was thick, heavy, with dust, with dampness, with something else, something alive. I took a slow step down, then another. The wood groaned beneath me like it was warning me. I ignored it. I had come too far to stop now. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The light didn't work. Of course it didn't. My flashlight flickered as I reached the bottom step. The beam cut through the dark, illuminating the basement's rotting wooden beams and stacks of forgotten junk. I turned slowly, scanning the space. Something was here. I could feel it. Watching. Waiting. Then I saw it. A door. Half hidden behind a stack of rusted metal shelving. Not a normal door. It was wrong. Just like the one upstairs. Too tall. Too narrow asterisk asterisk. Its wood was black, covered in deep scratches, as if something had tried to claw its way out. Or worse, asterisk asterisk tried to claw its way in asterisk asterisk. My breath turned to mist in the air. The cold was unreal. Something told me, asterisk asterisk screamed asterisk asterisk at me, to turn around, to run. But I couldn't, because I could hear it now. A whisper. My name. Coming from the other side of that door. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I reached for the handle. It was freezing. Colder than anything I had ever touched. I twisted it. The door groaned open. And inside, a room that should not exist. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The floor was stone. The walls were covered in symbols. Deep, carved markings that pulsed and twisted even though I wasn't moving. And in the center, a pit. Black. Endless. The second I saw it, my stomach turned. Because I knew. This wasn't a basement. It was a mouth. The house wasn't just haunted. It was alive. And it was hungry. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I took a slow step forward. Something shifted in the dark. A shape rose from the pit. Not fast. Not sudden. Like it had always been there. Waiting for me to see it. The figure was tall. Thin. Its body was all wrong. Its arms were too long. Its head, tilted, cocked to the side like it was listening. Its face. I don't know how to describe it. Because it didn't have one. Just a smooth, black surface. And yet, I knew it was smiling. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The whispers grew louder. I couldn't tell if they were in my head or if the walls were speaking. They slithered over me, wrapped around me like fingers. Like a caress. The thing moved. Not walked. Just shifted. And suddenly it was closer. The cold hit me so hard my knees buckled. I tried to move. Tried to breathe. But I couldn't. It raised one long, thin hand. Reached toward my face. And then, it spoke. Not in a voice. Not in words. Inside my head. Underscore Arthur failed him. Underscore you will too. Underscore. And then I saw what had happened to Arthur Blackwood, saw what had happened to the others before him. The house hadn't killed them. It had kept them, swallowed them whole, trapped them inside itself. Not ghosts, not memories, but something worse. And now, wanted me. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The thing took another step. I felt my body giving in, my limbs going numb, my thoughts slipping into static. It would take me, like it had taken Arthur, like it had taken all the others. No, I wasn't going to let it. With everything I had left, I forced my body to move. I turned and ran. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The house fought me. The basement door slammed shut. The air thickened, pressing against me like invisible hands. The whisper screamed, but I did not stop. I hit the door with my shoulder. Once, twice. On the third time, it burst open. I tumbled into the hall. I didn't look back, didn't stop, didn't even breathe. I ran out of that house, out into the night, and never ever looked back. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I drove. I don't know how far. I don't know for how long, but I never stopped. I left everything behind. The house, the town, everything. And yet, I know it's not over, because when I pulled into a motel that night, when I staggered to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, I saw something in the mirror, a smudge, a shadow, standing behind me, waiting, and when I turned around, there was nothing there, but I heard it, a whisper, a voice like rotted wood creaking in the wind. You can't run forever. I closed my eyes. I knew the truth. I had left the house, but it had not left me. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the door, listening, waiting. The whisper still echoed in my head. Asterisk, you can't run forever. Asterisk. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that I was just exhausted, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew the truth. I could feel it. The house was still with me. The thing inside it, asterisk, asterisk, it had followed asterisk, asterisk, and it was getting closer. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Morning came. The sun rose, but it didn't help. The light felt wrong, thin, weak, like it was struggling to hold something back. I checked out of the motel and kept driving. No destination, no plan, just a way. I passed through towns, cities, miles and miles of empty highway, but no matter where I went, it was still there. Shadows flickered in my rearview mirror. Streetlights buzzed and flickered as I passed. Whispers curled through the radio, slithering between stations. The same voice, always the same voice. Asterisk, you can't run forever. Asterisk, hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I stopped at a diner around dusk. I don't remember pulling over. Don't remember getting out of the car. But suddenly I was sitting in a booth, a cup of untouched coffee in front of me. A waitress hovered nearby. She looked at me, really looked, like she could see it on me. The weight, the fear, the thing looming over me. You okay, hon? She asked. My mouth was dry. I swallowed. I don't know. She hesitated. Then she leaned in, lowered her voice. You look like you've seen a ghost. I almost laughed. But then she said, or maybe she didn't. Maybe I just heard it. Maybe it was already inside me. She whispered, asterisk, or maybe a ghost has seen you. Asterisk, hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I left the diner in a daze. The sun had set. The sky was black. A new kind of black. Like the pit in the basement. Like the thing that had risen from it. My car was waiting for me. Dark windows. Reflections shifting in the glass. I stopped. Something was inside. Sitting in the driver's seat. Watching me. No, not watching. Waiting. I turned to run. But the parking lot was gone. The diner was gone. Everything was gone. I was standing in a hallway. A familiar hallway. The smell of dust. Right. I knew where I was. The house. I had never left. I had been here the whole time. The thing had never followed me, because I had never escaped. I turned, and the chair was there, the one from the living room, and someone was sitting in it, Arthur Blackwood, his skin gray and rotting. His mouth moved, whispering. I couldn't hear him. The whispers were too loud now. The air was too cold. And then, behind him, the door, the one in the basement. It yawned open, a black pit. Endless. The whispers became screams, and I knew what it wanted, what it had always wanted. It had been waiting for me to open the last door, waiting for me to step inside. The air pulled me forward. Hands reached from the dark. I tried to scream, to run, to fight, but it was too late. The house had already swallowed me whole. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. I woke up in the chair. My body, asterisk, asterisk, wrong, asterisk, asterisk. Rotten. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, only watch. The front door creaked open. Footsteps. A new tenant. Someone moving in. I tried to warn them, tried to scream. But the house had taken my voice. I could only sit and watch and wait, because now I was part of it, and I knew one day soon I would welcome them home. Story 4. I should have known something was wrong the moment I stepped into the house. Not in the obvious horror movie way. There were no bloodstains on the walls, no eerie whispers in the dark. It was the way the air felt thick, like walking into a place that had been holding its breath for far too long. I moved to Blackwood Lane a month after my divorce was finalized. I needed a fresh start, and when I saw the listing for a cheap rental, 3 bedrooms, old but well-maintained, it seemed like a no-brainer. The landlord, a thin man with a tight smile, barely looked me in the eye as I signed the lease. "It's been vacant a while," he said. "Last tenant didn't stay long. Hope you'll like it." That should have been my second clue. The first night, I chalked the strange noises up to the house settling. Creaks in the floorboards, the occasional groan of wood expanding in the night. Every old house does that. But at around 3 in the morning, I woke up to something heavier, a distinct, deliberate footstep outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was silent now, the air impossibly still. I told myself it was just my imagination, turned over and forced myself back to sleep. I told myself a lot of things in those first few nights. The next day, I met my neighbor, Mrs. Carver. She was in her late 60s with sharp, watchful eyes. When I told her I'd moved into that house, her expression flickered. Just for a second. Then she smiled, tight-lipped. "Oh, that place has history," she said. "People don't tend to stay there long." I laughed it off. "Well, I plan on breaking that streak." She just nodded. "Let's hope you do." That night, I heard the footsteps again. And this time they stopped right outside my door. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The footsteps had stopped just outside my bedroom door, and in that thick, suffocating silence, I could feel something standing there, waiting. My fingers curled into the sheets, heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just the house settling in some new, unsettling way. Then the floor creaked. Not a soft, gentle groan, but a deliberate shift, like someone was shifting their weight. I forced myself to swallow. My phone was on the nightstand just within reach. I grabbed it, thumb hovering over the screen. I thought about calling someone, the police, a friend. But what would I even say? "Hey, I think my house is breathing down my neck." I lay there for what felt like hours, staring at the dark outline of my bedroom door. The floor didn't creak again. No footsteps. Nothing. Just that awful, pressing silence. At some point, exhaustion won out and I slipped into a restless sleep. When I woke up, daylight had painted the room in shades of gold. The fear from last night felt ridiculous in the sun's warmth, but something about it still lingered. I checked the hallway, feeling stupid for how nervous I was, but there was nothing there. The floorboards outside my room looked undisturbed. No signs of an intruder. I tried to go about my day as usual. Made coffee. Unpacked a few more boxes. But something gnawed at the back of my mind. The footsteps. I told myself it had to be an animal, a raccoon in the attic, maybe. Houses make weird noises. That's all it was. But by the time night fell, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in this house. And that was before the knocking started. It was just past midnight. I had finally convinced myself to sleep when I heard it. 3 slow, rhythmic knocks. Knock. Knock. Knock, asterisk, asterisk. Not at the front door. Not at the windows. At the wall. Inside the house. I sat up, heart pounding. The knocking came again. 3 steady beats against the wall, like someone tapping their knuckles just on the other side of the drywall. It came from the hallway. Then it stopped. I sat frozen in bed, clutching the sheets. My throat was dry, my skin clammy. This isn't real. It's just my mind playing tricks on me, asterisk, asterisk. I reached for my phone again, but this time I stopped myself. Who would I even call? The cops? Tell them what? That my walls were knocking back? Instead, I got up. The hardwood floor was cold beneath my bare feet as I stepped cautiously into the hallway. I didn't turn the lights on. Maybe some part of me was too scared to see whatever was waiting there. The air was heavier in the hallway, thick with something stale, something wrong. I pressed a hand to the wall where the knocking had come from. It was ice cold. The house let out a deep, groaning creak, like the wood was shifting beneath my feet. Then, from the darkness behind me, a whisper. Not words. Just a breath, a presence, a feeling that something was right there. I spun around, heart in my throat. Nothing. Just an empty hallway, the yawning darkness of my living room beyond. I told myself to go back to bed. That I was just overtired, stressed. That's all it was. But as I walked back to my bedroom, I heard it again. A single, deliberate footstep behind me. And this time, I knew I wasn't imagining it. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. That single, deliberate footstep echoed through the silence behind me, and I felt it, not just the sound, but the weight of it. The presence. Something was there. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, my body frozen in place. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't move. Then, just as suddenly as it had come, the presence faded. The air felt lighter. The tension in my chest loosened just slightly. I forced myself to take a step forward. Then another. When I reached my bedroom, I shut the door, hard and locked it. My heart was still racing as I climbed back into bed, blankets pulled up like they could protect me from whatever the hell was out there. For the rest of the night, I lay awake, listening, waiting, but nothing else came. By the time morning arrived, the night before felt distant, like a bad dream. But I knew it wasn't. I heard it. I felt it, I spent the day convincing myself I was being ridiculous. I even forced myself to explore the house again, walking through each room, checking closets, tapping on walls like some kind of detective, looking for proof that it was just my imagination. But then I got to the end of the hallway. There was a room I hadn't really paid much attention to since I moved in. Just a small, empty space with a single window that overlooked the overgrown backyard. I had no use for it, so I kept the door closed. Today, though, something about it felt off. I hesitated before opening the door, my hand hovering over the knob. And then I noticed it. The door was already open. Just slightly. I didn't remember leaving it like that. Slowly I pushed it open. The room was the same as I remembered, dusty floorboards, bare walls, no furniture. But something about the air in there felt wrong. Stale. Heavy. And then I saw it. A single footprint in the dust. Not mine. Bare. Large. Facing the doorway. Like someone had been standing there, watching. A chill shot through me. My skin broke out in goosebumps. I took a step back. Then another. I shut the door, hard and walked away, my pulse hammering in my ears. For the rest of the day, I tried to ignore it. I distracted myself, went for a drive, picked up groceries, anything to avoid going back into that hallway. By the time I got home, the sun was already setting, and the house felt even heavier than before, like it was waiting for me. I told myself I'd just go to bed early, try to sleep, ignore everything. But as I climbed the stairs, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The door to the room at the end of the hall? It was open again. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, staring at the open door. I knew I had closed it. I knew. The house was silent, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that presses in, that hums beneath your skin, that makes you feel like you're being watched. My hands clenched into fists. This was stupid. This was paranoia. I took a step forward. Then another. The door stood ajar, just enough for darkness to spill out from the room beyond. The air smelled different here, stale like old wood and damp fabric. The kind of smell you find in a place that hasn't been touched in years. Except I'd just been in there. I reached for the doorknob, fingers trembling slightly, and pushed the door open. The room was empty. Dust swirled in the beam of light from the hallway. The window was still shut. Nothing had changed except for one thing. There were more footprints. The single, bare footprint I'd seen earlier was now joined by several others. A trail leading from the doorway to the middle of the room. And then, nothing. No exit tracks, like someone had walked in and just vanished. I swallowed hard. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't normal. This wasn't in my head. I took a slow step into the room, testing the floorboards. They creaked softly under my weight. I crouched down, hesitantly touching one of the prints. The dust was disturbed, the shape of the foot clear, deep, fresh. Someone, or something, had been in here. And then, behind me, awake, the floor in the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was out there. I turned, pulse hammering. Nothing. Just the dark hallway stretching out before me, leading to my bedroom. The air felt colder now. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones, settles in your chest. I took a step back out of the room and shut the door. This time I locked it. I practically ran to my bedroom, slamming my own door behind me. My hands were shaking as I clicked the lock into place. This house wasn't right. I climbed into bed, pulling the blankets up to my chin like a child hiding from the monster in the closet. Maybe that's exactly what I was doing. I closed my eyes, willed myself to sleep, and for a while I thought I was safe. But then, sometime deep in the night, I woke up to the sound of my doorknob turning. Click, 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 asterisk, asterisk. Someone was trying to get in. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, staring at the open door. I knew I had closed it. I knew. The house was silent, but not in a peaceful way. It was the kind of silence that presses in, that hums beneath your skin, that makes you feel like you're being watched. My hands clenched into fists. This was stupid. This was paranoia. I took a step forward, then another. The door stood ajar, just enough for darkness to spill out from the room beyond. The air smelled different here, stale like old wood and damp fabric. The kind of smell you find in a place that hasn't been touched in years. Except I'd just been in there. I reached for the doorknob, fingers trembling slightly, and pushed the door open. The room was empty. Dust swirled in the beam of light from the hallway. The window was still shut. Nothing had changed except for one thing. There were more footprints. The single, bare footprint I'd seen earlier was now joined by several others. A trail leading from the doorway to the middle of the room. And then, nothing. No exit tracks, like someone had walked in and just vanished. I swallowed hard. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't normal. This wasn't in my head. I took a slow step into the room, testing the floorboards. They creaked softly under my weight. I crouched down, hesitantly touching one of the prints. The dust was disturbed, the shape of the foot clear, deep, fresh. Someone, or something, had been in here. And then, behind me, awake, the floor in the hallway. My breath caught in my throat. Someone was out there. I turned, pulse hammering. Nothing. Just the dark hallway stretching out before me, leading to my bedroom. The air felt colder now. The kind of cold that sinks into your bones, settles in your chest. I took a step back out of the room and shut the door. This time I locked it. I practically ran to my bedroom, slamming my own door behind me. My hands were shaking as I clicked the lock into place. This house wasn't right. I climbed into bed, pulling the blankets up to my chin like a child hiding from the monster in the closet. Maybe that's exactly what I was doing. I closed my eyes, willed myself to sleep, and for a while I thought I was safe. But then, sometime deep in the night, I woke up to the sound of my doorknob turning. Click, 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 asterisk, asterisk. Someone was trying to get in. The doorknob rattled again. Click, 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 asterisk, asterisk. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't my imagination. I wasn't dreaming. Someone, asterisk, asterisk, something, asterisk, asterisk, was standing just outside my bedroom door, testing the handle, trying to get in. The lock held, but the knob kept turning, slow and deliberate, like whoever was out there wasn't in any kind of hurry. Like they had all the time in the world. I clenched my jaw, my fingers digging into the sheets. My phone was on the nightstand. I reached for it, heart hammering, and swiped at the screen with sweaty hands. The light from the screen cast a dim glow across the room. I went straight to the keypad, about to dial 911. The doorknob stopped moving. Silence. The air felt too thick, too heavy. My ears strained for any sound, any sign that whoever had been there was gone. Nothing. I exhaled shakily, thumbs still hovering over the call button. Maybe, asterisk, asterisk, maybe asterisk, asterisk. I'd imagined it. Maybe the stress of the move, the long nights, the house's weird noises were finally getting to me. I lowered the phone. And then, bang. A single violent knock against the door. I flinched so hard I nearly dropped my phone. My pulse exploded in my ears. That wasn't a polite knock, not someone hesitating or testing the door. It was a demand. A warning, asterisk, asterisk. Something wanted in. I stayed frozen, clutching my phone, staring at the door like it might burst open at any second. Then, just as quickly as it had started, asterisk, asterisk, it stopped, asterisk, asterisk. I don't know how long I sat there waiting, listening. My whole body was tense, every nerve screaming at me to run, hide, fight, something. But nothing else happened. I stayed awake until the sun started creeping through the curtains. Until the fear stopped feeling like a solid weight in my chest. When I finally worked up the courage to check the hallway, I was shaking. The door was locked just like I'd left it. Nothing looked disturbed. No footprints, no signs that anyone had been there. Except, when I glanced down at the door handle, I saw them. Fingerprints. Long, smudged streaks in the dust. Too long, like someone had dragged their fingers across the brass, pressing down just hard enough to leave a mark. I backed away, my stomach twisting. I didn't know what to do. Call the police? And tell them what? That ghostly fingers had touched my door in the night? That I was being haunted by something unseen? I had no proof. No real reason to believe I was in danger. But deep in my gut, I knew. This house didn't want me here. Or worse, it did. I didn't leave the house that day. I should have. I should have packed a bag, gotten in my car, and never looked back. But I didn't. Instead, I spent the morning pacing, drinking too much coffee, and jumping at every little sound. The house was awake now. I could feel it. I had to do something. I had to know what was happening here. So I started searching. At first, I just looked through old cabinets, drawers, the basement, places people tend to forget things. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. Some kind of explanation. A reason why the house felt this way. And then I found the attic. I almost didn't see the pull-down cord in the hallway ceiling. It was covered in dust, blending into the shadows. But when I noticed it, something in my stomach twisted. Like I wasn't supposed to. I reached up, hard hammering, and pulled. The attic door groaned open, unfolding a narrow wooden ladder. A rush of cold air spilled down, thick with the smell of old wood and something stale. I hesitated. Then I climbed. The attic was small, just a cramped space with wooden beams and insulation. And boxes. A lot of them. I stepped carefully over the creaky floor, brushing off layers of dust. Most of the boxes were filled with junk, old clothes, yellowed newspapers, broken picture frames. But then I found the trunk. It was shoved into the farthest corner of the attic, half hidden beneath a moth-eaten sheet. Unlike the rest of the junk, it didn't look abandoned. It looked placed. Hidden. My fingers trembled as I unlatched it. Inside, beneath a pile of brittle, rotting papers, was a book. A leather-bound journal, its edges cracked with age. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry as I lifted it, brushing off the dust. The leather was cool against my palms. And then I saw the name scrawled across the first page. Elias Wren. My chest tightened. I knew that name. I had heard it before, whispered in passing by my neighbor Mrs. Carver the day I moved in. Elias Wren. The original owner of the house, the one who had vanished. I took the journal downstairs, setting it carefully on the kitchen table. The house felt too quiet now, like it was listening. I opened to the first page. The ink was faded, the handwriting messy and erratic. But I could still read the words. July 3rd, 1956. I should not have done it. The air in this house has changed. Something moves in the dark now. I feel it watching me. Waiting. A chill crept down my spine. I turned the page. July 10th, 1956. The knocking started last night. At first, I thought it was rats in the walls. But rats do not whisper. I swallowed hard. My hands were shaking, but I kept reading. July 14th, 1956. I hear footsteps when I try to sleep. Heavy ones. Slow. It walks the halls, stopping outside my door. It does not come inside, but I feel it pressing against the wood. Testing it. I do not sleep anymore. A lump formed in my throat. I turned to the last entry. August 2nd, 1956. I made a mistake. The door should never have been opened. I thought I could control it, but it is stronger than me. Stronger than I imagined. It is in the walls now. It is in the house. And it is hungry. The final line was smeared, as if the ink had been dragged by a shaking hand. If you are reading this, leave. Leave before it finds you. The room felt colder. I sat there, staring at the journal, my pulse echoing in my ears. And then, awake. A slow, deliberate footstep. Right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. The footstep behind me was slow, heavy, like someone, or something, was shifting their weight, waiting for me to acknowledge them. My breath hitched in my throat. The journal lay open in front of me, Elias Wren's final warning staring up from the page. If you are reading this, leave. Leave before it finds you. But it was too late. It had already found me. The air behind me shifted. A whisper of movement, a presence so close I swore I could feel the heat of breath on the back of my neck. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. Think. I turned the page. August 3rd, 1956 The final entry, It does not like to be seen. When I look, it vanishes, but it does not leave. It is still here. Always here. underscore. My stomach dropped. It doesn't like to be seen. Slowly, asterisk asterisk so slowly asterisk asterisk. I turned my head. The kitchen was empty. But I knew better. I could still feel it lingering just beyond my line of sight. Watching. Waiting. A deep, crawling dread settled into my bones. I pushed the chair back and stood on shaky legs, my breath coming too fast, too shallow. Underscore if you are reading this, leave, underscore. I needed to get out of this house. I grabbed my keys and my phone, my hands fumbling as I stuffed them into my jacket. My legs felt stiff as I forced myself to move toward the front door. Step, 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 then, bang. The kitchen lights went out. The entire house plunged into darkness. I gasped, my pulse hammering. My fingers fumbled against the wall, searching desperately for the switch, but creak. A single footstep. Closer. No. I spun toward the front door, my fingers closing around the handle, twisting. It wouldn't budge. Locked. Not the kind of locked where I'd forgotten to turn the bolt. The kind of locked where something was holding it shut from the other side. I yanked harder, panic rising in my throat. My breath came in shallow bursts. The walls felt too close. And then, in the pitch-black darkness, a whisper. Garbled. Right next to my ear. Stay. Underscore. A cold, skeletal hand clamped down on my wrist. I screamed. I don't remember how I got free. I don't remember how I got the door open. But the next thing I knew, I was outside, gasping for air, the night pressing in around me. The house loomed behind me, silent and still. I stumbled down the porch steps, my body shaking so badly I could barely stay upright. My car was in the driveway, but I couldn't move, couldn't think past the sheer terror coursing through me. And then, from the darkened window of the hallway upstairs, something moved. A shifting shadow. A shape that wasn't there before. Watching. Waiting. I turned and ran. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the street. The cold air burned in my lungs, my heart hammering so fast I thought it might burst. I reached my car, yanked the door open, and threw myself inside, locking it in one frantic motion. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching against the pavement. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get away. As I sped down the empty road, my eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and my stomach dropped. The house. It stood there in the distance, dark and looming. But in the second-floor window, the one I knew belonged to the room at the end of the hall, something was standing there. A shadow. Tall. Watching I tore my eyes away, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I drove until I hit the main road, my pulse still hammering, my mind racing. I had no plan, no destination. I just kept going until I saw the first neon sign glowing in the night. A 24-hour diner. I pulled into the parking lot, my hands still shaking as I killed the engine. The lights inside the diner were warm, fluorescent, safe. I needed to be somewhere with people. Somewhere that house couldn't reach me. I stumbled inside and slid into a booth near the back, pressing my palms against the sticky tabletop, trying to steady my breathing. A waitress approached, middle-aged, tired eyes, name tag reading Marge. "You okay, hun?" she asked, eyeing me like I might bolt at any second. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I must have looked insane, wild-eyed, pale, still shaking from whatever had just happened, Marge just nodded like she'd seen worse. "I'll get you some coffee." I didn't argue. As I sat there, the diner's soft hum of conversation and clinking dishes settled around me, grounding me. I pulled out my phone with numb fingers and searched for hotels nearby. I wasn't going back to that house. Not tonight. Maybe not ever, The waitress returned, setting a steaming cup of coffee in front of me. I wrapped my hands around it just to feel something warm. "You from around here?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just moved in." Her expression darkened slightly. "Where to?" I hesitated. "House on Sycamore." The reaction was instant. Marge's mouth pressed into a thin line. "You mean the Wren house?" The air between us seemed to change. "You should have done your research, kid," she muttered, shaking her head. "Ain't nobody stays in that house long." A cold knot tightened in my stomach. My voice cracked. I swallowed hard. "Do you know what happened there?" Marge sighed, leaning against the counter. She looked around like she was making sure no one else was listening. Then she lowered her voice. "People say that place is wrong. That Elias Wren messed with things he shouldn't have." I didn't breathe. "What things?" I asked. Marge glanced at me, then out the window toward the darkened street. "Rituals. Summoning. He opened something in that house, something that never left. The coffee in my hand suddenly felt cold. I read his journal, I admitted. He wrote that he made a mistake. That something was in the house with him. Marge exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. That ain't the worst part, she murmured. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean? She hesitated, then lowered her voice even more. He never left. The words settled in my chest like a block of ice. But, I swallowed. I thought he vanished? She gave a slow, grim nod. That's what they say. But people who've lived there after him? They've seen things. A figure standing in the hallway. A shape watching from the windows. And at night they hear footsteps. A shiver crawled up my spine. Footsteps. The same ones I'd heard. I set the coffee down, my hands shaking again. Then why doesn't anyone do anything? Why hasn't the house been torn down? Marge scoffed. Tear it down? And let whatever's in there loose? No, hon. That house is a tomb. I blinked. A tomb for what? Marge looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something in her expression that scared me more than anything else. Pity. She opened her mouth to speak, and then, from outside, a shadow moved past the diner window. My stomach twisted. I turned sharply, heart hammering, my breath caught in my throat. But there was nothing there. Just the reflection of the diner's neon lights on the glass. But I knew better. I could still feel it. Something had followed me. I sat frozen in that diner booth, the blood in my veins turning to ice. That shadow. It had been outside. Watching. Waiting. Marge must have noticed the change in my expression because her voice softened. Hun, you're shaking. I barely heard her. My eyes were locked on the window, on the empty street outside. A street that, just moments ago, had not been empty. There was nothing there now. But I knew. I felt it. Something was still out there, just beyond my sight. I swallowed hard and forced my gaze back to Marge. My hands were gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles had gone white. You said Elias Wren never left, I murmured, barely able to get the words out. But, if he's still in that house, then what the hell was outside just now? Marge's lips parted slightly. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for a second she didn't say a word. Then she whispered something that sent a cold shiver slithering down my spine. Maybe it's not just him. A sharp chill ran through my entire body. Not just him. I licked my lips, my mouth suddenly bone dry. What are you saying? Marge hesitated, but before she could speak, my phone buzzed. The sharp vibration against the table made me jump. My pulse exploded in my ears as I scrambled to grab it. Unknown number. I didn't recognize it. Didn't want to answer it. But I did. I slowly brought the phone to my ear, my throat tightening as I whispered, "Hello?" At first, silence. Then, a slow, rattling breath. Not human. Not normal. And then, a whisper, low, static-filled, something that barely sounded like words. Why did you leave? I slammed the phone down. My breath was coming too fast, too shallow, my chest tightening like a vice. The diner felt suddenly too small, the walls pressing in. Marge was staring at me now. What was that? She asked cautiously. I shook my head. I swallowed thickly. I don't know. I glanced back at the window, half expecting to see something standing there. Nothing. I pushed my chair back, nearly knocking over the coffee cup. I need to go. Marge frowned. Where? I hesitated. Not back to the house. I couldn't. But where else? Where do you go when something is already following you? My hands clenched into fists. My mind raced. I needed a place to think. To figure this out, ***. I made a decision. I'll get a hotel, I murmured. Marge watched me for a long moment, her lips pressing together like she wanted to argue. Instead, she just nodded. Be careful, kid. I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door, the cold night air slamming into me like a wall. My car sat in the empty lot, bathed in the yellow glow of a flickering street lamp. I climbed inside, locked the doors, and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe. I wasn't crazy. Something was following me. Something from that house. I pulled up the nearest hotel on my phone, my fingers still trembling, and started driving. But as I turned onto the highway, something changed. The air inside the car felt colder. Like something had slipped inside with me. I turned up the heat. Nothing. I checked the rearview mirror. And froze. In the back seat behind me, the shape. A dark figure, sitting just beyond the edge of the mirror's reflection. My breath caught. My hands locked around the wheel. And then, it leaned forward. I didn't see its face. I didn't have to. A single rasping breath filled the car. A whisper. You can't run from me. The car swerved, my tires screeched against the pavement. I yanked the wheel, barely managing to keep myself from skidding off the road. And then, the presence was gone. I gasped for air, pulling over onto the shoulder, my body shaking violently. My back seat was empty. But I wasn't safe. I would never be safe. Because Marge had been right. Elias Wren was still in that house. But something else was too. And now it was with me. I sat in my car on the side of the road, gasping for air. My hands trembled against the steering wheel, my entire body still buzzing with adrenaline. The back seat was empty now. But I knew what I had seen. What I had felt. That thing, whatever it was, had been inside my car. It had whispered to me. It had let me know, in no uncertain terms, that I couldn't run from it. I wiped a shaking hand across my face and forced myself to breathe. Out ***. I needed to get the hell out of here. The hotel was 10 minutes away. I could make it. I just had to move. I put the car into drive and pulled back onto the road, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror every few seconds, half expecting to see something sitting there again. Nothing. But I still felt it. Like invisible fingers trailing across my skin. Like eyes watching me from just beyond the reach of the headlights. By the time I reached the hotel, my nerves were shot. I pulled into the parking lot, killed the engine, and all but stumbled out of the car. The night air was sharp and cold, biting into my skin. I didn't care. I just needed to be inside. Somewhere bright. Somewhere safe ***. The hotel lobby was small, outdated, the kind of place that smelled like stale coffee and old carpet. A bored-looking receptionist glanced up as I approached the front desk. "Need a room?" she asked. I nodded, still trying to steady my breathing. "Yeah, just for the night." She tapped at her computer, barely paying attention. "Credit card?" I fumbled with my wallet, handed her my card, and waited while she processed it. My eyes darted around the lobby, checking the corners, the shadows, the reflections in the glass. I didn't trust anything anymore. "Room 214, the receptionist said, sliding a keycard across the counter. I took it and muttered a thanks before hurrying toward the elevator. By the time I reached my room, I was exhausted. My body felt heavy, my head foggy. The fear hadn't left me, but my limbs were starting to ache from how tense I'd been. The room was plain. Beige walls, a small TV, a single window with ugly brown curtains. I locked the door, bolted it, and leaned against it, shutting my eyes for a moment. I was safe here ***, right? I took a hot shower, letting the steam loosen the tight knots in my shoulders. I kept my ears open the whole time, listening for anything out of place. Any whispers. Any footsteps. Nothing. When I got out, I checked my phone. No messages. No calls. But as I was about to set it down, something made my breath hitch. A notification. "One new photo saved to your phone." My stomach dropped. I hadn't taken any photos. I hadn't touched my camera. With shaking hands, I opened my gallery. The most recent image was pitch black. At first, I thought it was just a mistake, maybe an accidental screenshot. But then I turned up the brightness, and I saw it. A face, half hidden in the darkness. Too wide, too pale. Its mouth stretched into something that might have been a grin, or a snarl. Its eyes. It had no eyes. Just black, empty sockets staring straight at me. My breath hitched in my throat. I dropped the phone like it had burned me, my pulse hammering. No ***. I backed away from the bed, from the phone, from that thing in the photo. The air in the room changed. A low, humming pressure filled my ears. Like something had just stepped into the room with me. I turned to the bathroom mirror, and my reflection was wrong. It was standing just a little too still. I moved. It didn't. Then slowly, it smiled. I ran. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, my phone. ***, I didn't care about anything else. ***, I bolted out of the room, down the hallway, through the lobby, out into the freezing night air. My car was still there. I threw myself inside and locked the doors, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I checked my phone again. The photo was gone, like it had never been there. But I knew better. It was playing with me now, and it wanted me back. I sat in my car outside the hotel, the engine idling, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I should have felt relief. I had left the house. I was miles away from it now ***. But I didn't feel safe. Not even close. Because I had seen it. It had followed me. The thing in the car. The whisper on the phone. The face in the mirror. Leaving the house hadn't mattered. It was still with me. I took a shaky breath and forced myself to think. I needed to do something. Marge had said the house was a tomb, that Elias Wren had never truly left. But what if it wasn't just him? What if he had brought something through? And what if, by living there, by reading his journal, by stepping into that space, I had let it attach itself to me? I squeezed my eyes shut. I couldn't keep running. It wasn't working. There was only one way to end this. I had to go back. I had to face whatever was in that house. I didn't let myself second guess it. If I thought about it too long, I'd turn around, find another hotel, keep running until my body gave out. And then it would still find me. So I put the car in gear, pulled out of the parking lot, and started driving. Back to Sycamore Street. Back to the house. It was past midnight when I reached the neighborhood. The street was empty, quiet, too quiet. No passing cars. No distant sounds of life. Just the low hum of the wind pushing through the trees. And there it was. The house. Dark. Still. Waiting. The porch light flickered dimly as I pulled into the driveway. A wave of nausea rolled through me. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around. But I didn't. I killed the engine and stepped out. The night air felt heavier here. The shadows longer. I approached the front door, my fingers tightening around the key. The wood was cold under my touch. I took a breath, slid the key into the lock, and the door swung open on its own. My stomach twisted. I stepped inside. The house was silent. No creaking floorboards. No distant whispers. Just a heavy, suffocating quiet. I moved slowly, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. The air smelled different now. Stale, rotten, like something had been left to decay. The living room looked untouched. My half-packed boxes sat exactly where I had left them. But I wasn't here for that. I was here for the room at the end of the hall. The one I had never entered. I forced my feet forward, each step slow, deliberate. The air grew colder as I approached. Then I was there, standing in front of it. The door was slightly ajar. The darkness inside felt deeper than it should be, like a hole in the world stretching further than the dimensions of the house. I swallowed, and then with one final breath, I pushed the door open. The room was empty. No furniture. No signs that anyone had ever lived in it. Just 4 bare walls and a single window. And yet, it felt crowded, like something was here. I stepped inside, my breath coming short and shallow. The air was thick, oppressive. My foot hit something. I looked down. A book. No, a journal, not the one I had found before. This one was different. It looked older, darker. I bent down, my fingers hesitating before picking it up. The moment I touched it, the door slammed shut behind me. I spun, my pulse exploding. The room was pitch black. I felt something shift in the air. A presence, right behind me, breathing, slow. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Then, a whisper, crawling beneath my skin. You shouldn't have come back. Something touched my shoulder. I screamed. I yanked open the door, stumbling into the hallway. My body felt sluggish, like something was pulling me back, dragging me down. I ran. The house groaned, the walls seemed to move, stretch, breathe. I reached the front door and tore it open, throwing myself outside. I collapsed onto the porch, gasping. And then, the house sighed. The door swung shut behind me with a soft, final click, like it had let me go, for now. I didn't go back inside. I didn't pack. I got in my car and drove. I don't remember how long I drove. I don't remember where I went. All I knew was that I had to get away. But as I sit here hours later, parked on the side of the road with no destination, I realize something. It's not over. I can still feel it. Watching. Waiting. The house let me go. But it won't let me forget. I don't know how long I've been driving. Maybe hours. Maybe days. The road stretches ahead of me, endless and empty. The gas gauge dips lower with every mile, but I don't stop. I can't stop, because if I do, I might hear it again. The breathing, the whispers, the house. It let me go. I know that much, but it's still with me, and I don't think it's ever going to leave. I don't remember checking into the motel. I just remember pulling into the parking lot, my hands still shaking on the wheel. I needed sleep. Just an hour or two. The room was small and smelled like mildew. A single, buzzing light flickered in the ceiling. I locked the door, bolted it, pulled the chair in front of it for good measure. Then I collapsed onto the bed. Don't think, don't listen. Just sleep, And for a little while, I did. Until I woke up to the sound of footsteps. I jolted upright, my heart pounding. The room was dark. Too dark. The streetlights outside barely cut through the curtains. I held my breath. Listen. Soft, shuffling steps. Right outside the door. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone was pacing. I clenched the sheets, every muscle in my body rigid. Then, a soft tap. Not knocking. Just tapping. Fingertips against the wood. I sat frozen, my breath caught in my throat. Another tap. Then a whisper. Well, crawling through the cracks of the door. Let me in. My stomach clenched. My fingers dug into the mattress. I squeezed my eyes shut. No, you're not real. The whisper came again. You left something behind. And then, something slid under the door. A piece of paper. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to know. But my hands moved on their own, reaching for it, lifting it into the dim glow of the streetlights outside. It was a page, torn, from Elias Wren's journal, and scrawled across it in smeared, frantic ink. You can't leave. IT won't let you. A sharp, cold breath curled against my ear. Inside the room, right behind me, I turned, and I saw it. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember running. I just remember waking up in my car, the motel in the rearview mirror, my hands still white-knuckled on the wheel. The sun had started to rise. The sky was bleeding pink and gold over the empty highway. But I wasn't safe. I'll never be safe. Because I understand now. The house never wanted me to leave. And even though I ran, it's still inside me. I see it when I close my eyes. I hear it in the spaces between silence. I feel it even now as I sit here trying to write this down, trying to make sense of it all. The house let me go. But I think it's waiting. For the right moment. For the right weakness. For me to stop running. Because when I do, it'll call me home again. And next time, I don't think it'll let me leave.